I'd like to call to order the January 8th, 2014 meeting of the Milton School Committee. Please join me as we salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence in a minute for two retired Milton Public School employees who recently passed away. We had Maureen King, who worked in our Milton High School cafeteria from 2003 until her retirement in 2012, and Elaine McFadden, who worked at Milton High School as a part of the support staff from 1985 until her retirement in 1998. Please join me in a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you. We'll begin tonight's meeting by approving tonight's agenda. I have two changes. One is to remove the diversity report from this agenda and place it on the January 22nd meeting agenda. That would be our next meeting. And also, I would like to move the chairman's report to right after the approval, as soon as we finish this in our agenda. Any further additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
Just that we have an edited 13-14 school calendar at everyone's seat.
Thank you. Okay. So we will move towards the chairman's report. And at this time, the only agenda item we have is the Milton Educators Association Unit A agreement. And I'm going to turn this portion over to School Committee Vice Chair LeRoy Walker. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
And I would open by saying that I'm very pleased to report we have a tentative agreement with the MEA, which was ratified by the union last night. First and foremost, I would like to thank the bargaining team, Ms. Padera, the superintendent, Mr. Phelan, Mr. Pavlicek. It was a very, very long process, as you know, longer than we had been used to, but I think at the end of the day, it's clear we achieved the objectives that we set out to. And I want to talk about that just a little bit. We had a number of objectives. One was to make sure that we remain competitive, and that's because the foremost priority that we had is to maintain the excellent school system that we have and to maintain the excellent teaching staff that we have. And as part of that process, we looked at more than 10 communities that we view as comparables to make sure that one, where we were in terms of the market, but also where we wanted to end up. And I think Mr. Zulus is going to talk about that a little more. Second, and just as important, was fiscal responsibility. We have a responsibility to make sure that the dollars that we're entrusted with are allocated in the best way, and to make sure, again, that we maintain excellence in our school system. And then finally, on the non-economic side, we wanted to make sure that we increased the professional development and collaborative planning time. And the thinking there was that with the advancement initiatives that we're doing, with the enrichment programs that we're doing, with the new evaluation tool that the state has mandated, there are increasing demands on our teaching staff, and we owe it to them to make sure that we provide them with the professional development and the opportunity to plan collaboratively that will help us achieve those goals. So, in general, the key provisions that we were able to accomplish, first on the non-economic side, we did get agreement on a collaborative planning model which engages teachers, our curriculum coordinators, and our leadership team, most notably the principals, in planning for professional development on a regular basis. That included 4 additional half-days of professional development. we were able to restore spring conferences, which was important for parents and which Ms. Padera was a strong advocate for. And as required by the state, we got agreement on the teacher evaluation model. So that was on the non-economic side. On the economic side, we had two objectives which were critically important. One was to moderate the overall salary growth, and the second, just as important, was to create a step structure where we started to compress the range of the steps so that in any given year we weren't seeing 10% salary increases when combined with the cost of living and a step. I'm pleased to report that we accomplished both of those objectives. So with that, I'm going to move that we approve, and I'm actually going to ask for a separate vote. We have the MOA itself and then an appendix, which is the evaluation language. I'm going to ask that we vote those separately, but I'm urging all of us to vote in favor.
So we have a motion, and do we have a second? And I just want to note that Anne Marie Fagan is a voting member of this committee for purposes of contract negotiations, and she's joined us here at the table, so thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Is there any further discussion? By Mr. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Padera. Okay. No further discussion, okay. All in favor?
On the MOA?
Yes, I'm sorry, I thought that's what you moved for.
I did.
Okay.
Is this on the MOA?
The MOA, yes.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Would you like to
Sorry,
comment?
Mr. Zullo.
Yes, I will.
Yes.
I mean, I just want to articulate, as Leroy suggested, articulate one point that was important to, I know me and I think others as well. It's as Leroy suggested, it's no great epiphany to state that the most critical component to maintaining and enhancing the school system is to be able to attract and retain great teachers and to be competitive in that market. With all due respect to the administrators and all the other personnel in the school, the teachers are the talent, and the teachers are the ones that we need to retain and attract. And so what was important, at least to me, and as I said, I think to others, was that we maintain that competitive edge that we have had in the current contract in this next contract. One of the ways to retain and attract the best talent is to offer competitive compensation. And so then the question is, well, what's competitive compensation? And as Leroy suggested, we had a range of about 20 communities that we looked at, and those included communities that were suggested by the head of the union as comparable communities. And we used that to try to define the market of what was competitive and what was competitive compensation. Now, we have a chart, and I don't know if it'd be helpful to put the chart up because there are a lot of numbers on the chart. Glenn, I don't know if we have the chart, we can put it up there. Very briefly, if the chair will indulge me, and if Leroy will indulge me, I'll put it up there.
Absolutely.
I think it makes sense. What the chart shows, before it goes up there, what the chart shows, it's an analysis of the salary structure against these 20 other comparable communities, as we see it, for fiscal year 13, which is the current year, the current contract, and then the 3 years of the new contract, fiscal years 14, 15, and 16. And what it is based on is one of the 5 lanes that the teachers are in, and it's the master's, what's referred to as the master's B30 lane. And the reason we use that as the analysis is because that is the lane in which the majority of the teachers reside. And so rather than trying to put together a spreadsheet with 5 different spreadsheets, we thought we'd focus on what was most applicable here and what was affecting most of the teachers. And so this chart and this analysis is based on what the majority of the teachers are going to be receiving. What the chart also shows is an analysis of the salary structure at the different steps. And the steps, for the members of the public. The steps are simply the number of years of service. That's the chart right there. The steps are the number of years of service, so you'll see steps on the far left if it becomes bigger. So the steps are the number of years of service, and the teachers at the Masters B30 lane, which is their level of achievement, will slot in at a particular step. And so we compared the Milton salaries in the, oops, sorry.
You can keep talking.
So we compared the Milton salaries to the average for these 20 communities and determined what the difference was. And you'll see for fiscal year 13 at the different steps, Milton is competitive. Milton's salaries are on average higher than the average for these 20 communities. And so that makes us competitive. That makes us able to attract and retain the best teachers. So on average, you'll see on the gray highlighted area that those are the percentages by which Milton is above the average for those 20 communities. For the next 3 years, those numbers continue, but then in the third year, as Leroy suggested, they are moderated to a degree. So in my view, and I think it's fair to say in the view of several members of the committee, this allows the Milton Public Schools to remain competitive and to attract and retain the best teacher talent, and in that way to maintain and enhance the schools going forward. I will say, personally, in a perfect world, I would prefer that by fiscal year 16, we be a little bit more competitive at the years 1 through 5 and maybe a little less competitive at years 6 through 13, maybe balance that competitive edge a bit. But two things. One is no one elected me philosopher king, and two, compromise is about not about perfection and not about what one party thinks is perfect, but it's about what is acceptable to each side. And I think this is acceptable certainly to this side. I think it's been shown to be acceptable to the other side, and I think it allows the schools to go forward and, as I said, retain and attract the best talent to allow the schools to continue to be enhanced. And that's why I'm going to vote in favor of this contract.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Any other comments? Mrs. Kelly?
So, I appreciate this information. Did you just put this together today?
I put this together before, and then
But I haven't seen it compared to the present grid.
Oh, yeah, I negotiated, yeah, I just put that in
Yep.
today.
No, this is great. I think it's a very useful visual. I think it actually should be probably posted somewhere on the website. And I think it tells a story that says that Milton's teachers, for the most part, with this contract, will be competitive, as you stated, competitively compensated. And this is, the salary component of a benefits package. We have I think, comparatively generous health care benefit package as well compared to other communities. One of my driving goals of negotiations over all of the negotiations that I've participated in has been to try and decrease, without necessarily impacting this competitiveness, the rollover number of the teachers' salaries. Because essentially what happens year to year is to roll over not only the teachers, but also the entire staffing in the Milton Public Schools requires resources that exceed the amount that's allocated for 2.5% growth in the town of Milton. And so You will hear later in this meeting that we have a cut list unfortunately, of positions that if we don't get all of our requests, we will have to cut. And this is a fine balancing act. You know, we definitely are a town that needs to have overrides, and that contributes to sort of the pie, and it enables us to continue to grow our system. But teacher compensation is part of the puzzle. And my goal has always been to try and decrease it a little bit, not dramatically, not like, you know, there would be a zero from one year to the next, but that we would need to bring that down. As part of the negotiations, I agreed with my fellow members to go to a step that was actually above where I wanted to be. And then as part of the negotiation process evolved, they went a little bit further. And for that reason, I'm going to be voting against this. I think our negotiation team and the whole process, it was very difficult. I think it was, but it was principled. I think we weren't doing it just to you know, have a fight. It was, there are some real impacts to us not being able to have flexibility in some of these areas. And some of the impacts you'll see, you know, is the year-to-year budget cuts that we inevitably have to put in place, which really go against the core of our main goal here, which is to continually improve the Milton Public Schools. So I will be voting against it. I'm very happy that the salaries will remain very competitive with all those communities that we compare ourselves to, and hopefully, maybe as a town, we can start talking about ways that we can fill in some of the other gaps in the future to address some of these issues.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Anyone else? Mr. Walker?
So I'm not going to engage directly on Ms. Kelly's comment, and I would say, for the record, that we agree a lot more than we don't. But on the point that we went a little further than we had discussed and unanimously approved in our executive session discussion, I would say at that stage in the negotiations, the choice was come away with an agreement that validated and energized our teaching staff, or come away with a process which would have included picketing the next day that continued to demoralize our teaching staff, and we chose the former and not the latter. So on the motion?
Any further discussion? Before we vote, I'd just like to say thank you, give my thanks to the negotiating team and the administration and the teachers' union for all of their work and effort and countless hours of painstaking dedication that you all gave to this process, and we appreciate it, so thank you. All in favor? Opposed? So that was 5 to 1. And we entertain another motion?
Well, that's right. Chris is not here. So it shouldn't be 6, should be 7.
Do you have another motion?
Yes, on the evaluation language, appendix to the MOA, move that we approve that.
Second. Moved by Mr. Walker, second by Mrs. Padera. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's 5 to 1 with Mrs. Kelly opposing again. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne Marie, for joining us. And we'll go back to our agenda as it was before. And citizen speak. Do we have anyone here for citizen speak? I have been in receipt of a written testimony from a parent, Mac D'Alessandro, who would have read this testimony had he been able to be here this evening, but he wasn't able to be here, so I just want to note that it's been duly received, and all of the school committee members have received a hard copy of this as well, so thank you. And there's no one here further for citizen speak, so we'll move to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2013 school committee. Mrs. Kelly?
Can I just make a note? This should, I think, be attached to the minutes of this school committee?
Right. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2013 school committee meeting.
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Unanimous.
It's unanimous. You voted for that, Mrs. Kelly? I didn't
She
see
did.
it. Okay.
I did, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
A little.
Sorry. All right, thank you. And we move to the superintendent's report. Ms. Gormley.
I'd like to invite to the table our Milton High School Site Council. And I would ask Principal James Jett to make the introductions.
It's up 2.9% for year one.
Thanks, Mr. Jett.
You got quite a crowd.
It's downstairs. This thing's linked to my downstairs computer.
And you're here tonight with your Site Council presentation and your program of studies. So I'll turn it over to Principal James Jett and welcome Milton High School students, staff, parents, and guardians.
Good evening. On behalf of our entire Site Council, which many members are not here, I do want to make note of one quick change on the introduction. I submitted the Site Council that omitted two names on there, which I do apologize. We have since added them. There's Morgan Connolly, who is here with us tonight, and Maya Atley, who is not. So those are the two changes that were added onto it, and I think we owe it to them to recognize them as well. Excuse me?
Are you talking about their heads? Yes. You know, the individuals that have the light shining in them, they may want to, shining on their faces.
Whoever you are.
We can't see you.
So as a result, we have the opportunity to meet once a month on a Thursday at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I have to say that, as you can see by the numbers on our Site Council, for the most part, we have a packed house in our principal's conference room, and we engage in a lot of discussion regarding the policy or programs at Milton High School. And so I will pass the mic to let people introduce themselves and give you a little bit about their background. Again, James Jett, Principal, Milton High School.
Michelle Cruiser, Vice Principal, Milton High School.
Morgan Conley, Junior Representative.
Betty White, Community Representative.
Veronica Guerrero Macia. I have a 10th grader and a 5th grader at Cunningham.
Brendan Hunt, the Senior Representative.
I'm Ben Kelly, a math teacher at the high school.
You can take this.
So again, this evening we'll start off and talk about some of the work that we've done, but I think I should preface this conversation. In the past, when the Site Council has come before the school committee to present some of the work that we've done, a lot of the times we presented some data. The high school presented a lot of data. In the fall, we came before you a couple of times to talk about some of our student achievement and some of the initiatives. So I just wanted to share that with you before we get started. So tonight, for the purpose of this presentation, we'll talk about our school improvement plan, which is a continuation of what we have done in the past. This is an initiative that's district-wide, that is drilled down school by school, and we'll talk about the 5 categories that we'll highlight for you this evening. And we'll talk about the goals and initiatives that are complemented. And at the end of the presentation, we will highlight a few. We incorporated many highlights that happened at the high school, and we'll talk about a few. The school improvement plan, we had 5 areas that the central office, school committee, along with the administrators talked about that we would really touch upon that we felt as though were near and dear important to the Milton community and the Milton Public Schools. The first is high academic achievement for all students, excellent in the classrooms, collaborative relationships and communication, respect for human differences, and also risk-taking and innovation for education. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So the first one, high achievement for all students. In addition to the success that we have with our APs, SATs, college acceptances, and many of our enrichment programs, one of the initiatives that we're really focusing on this year is our proficiency gap. although we do well, we still have some of our subgroups that we find challenges in terms of the achievement, but we are making significant progress, but we also recognize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I will turn the mic over to teacher representative Ben Kelly, who is a math teacher at the high school, and he'll talk a little bit about his involvement with this process and what he's brought to the site council in addition to work that he's done outside of the site council.
So as part of the site council, we've been involved in a lot of discussions around our school improvement plan, and the first objective, as Mr. Jett has outlined, is high academic achievement for all. And my focus over the past couple of months has been specifically on what we can do as a high school to try to close a proficiency gap at our school. I've recently gone back to school and have spent the last couple of months doing my practicum hours along with Courtney Walsh and Barbara Wright, directors here at the high school, to try to identify as many students we've deemed at risk as possible and outline the supports that are currently in place in our school system and specifically here at the high school. Everything from, just to name a few, our bridge program, MCAS support classes, varsity, junior varsity athletics, programs like Young Men's Group, guidance counselors, advisory teachers, everything to students who take advantage of adjustment counseling, you name it, all the supports that we have here. We tried to compile that data. So over the past couple of months, what we've done as a group is take a look at what students have been identified based on MCAS scores, based on PSAT in some cases, and report cards, and their involvement in some of these programs already, and look at the data to say, what supports do we already offer these students? And personally, one of the problems I've found in my own classroom is that I may have a student sometimes who is struggling in my class, but without all of the access to all the data in front of me, I don't know every time what supports are already in place for this student. So my focus has been on creating a spreadsheet that would identify every support system that's already in place for these students to allow the faculty and the staff here at the school to know who they can reach out to if they're having a problem with the student, or who they can reach out to best support that student. We're talking everyone from coaches to advisors to their 5 academic teachers, support teacher, and really any adult who comes into contact in our school system. At this point, we're happy to say that our document, at least the first draft, is ready to go out to the staff, and our goal will be this month to send that out and give teachers the ability to use it as a resource to look up what are my students already involved in, and also to perhaps suggest other supports that they could benefit from, again, hoping to close the proficiency gap.
The next item? The next item that we have, and I do want to commend Mr. Kelly on his work that he's done, but I would be remiss not to mention that this is work that we're doing also with the central office, who is scheduling meetings with principals throughout the district. So we're also feeding that information to central office as well. At the high school, we're the beneficiaries of some great results on our MCAS test, as we reported back in the fall, but we look at it and we say it's a group effort. You know, we're only as good as the kids that come up to us, the students that come up to us from the middle, and the middle is only as good as the students that come up to them from the elementary. So it is a team effort, and these are the conversations that we're sharing throughout the district. The next one on there is we recently did some work last year prior to the MCAS for our freshmen, taking the biology in the spring, which is at the beginning of June. The science department, along with Marilyn Decker, came to me and made a proposal to the administration in our leadership meeting to administer our final exam a week or so earlier. So that way they could correct it, identify some of the areas of weaknesses, and hopefully do a crash course prior to the MCAS exam and really hone in on some of the areas of weaknesses. If you notice, 2 years ago, our achievement was in the 70% of students proficient in advanced. Last year, we netted 94% of our students in proficient in advanced on the test. So we looked at it and we said, wow, our students did so well because of the work of our teachers. Why don't we try implementing and doing something a little bit earlier? So the Friday prior to vacation, biology teachers got together, and they did again this afternoon as part of the time that we gave them as part of the principals meeting, and really worked on putting together a midterm exam that was very closely related to the type of questions that are on the MCAS test, from over the years. And our hope is to administer that midterm, identify strengths and weaknesses, bolster them up, and maybe again do the final exam a little bit earlier, so our students are in that routine of taking a test. And we felt as though their efforts last year really netted some great results. And so we're looking to do something like that again this year.
Additionally, we're looking to increase the number of cross-disciplinary opportunities for our students. Some examples that I have from this past year are physics and computer science classes teaming up for a robotics activity, European history and AP statistics classes teaming up to create a statistical analysis of World War II, including casualties, economic losses, population shifts, etc. Introduction to computer science and music, and teaming up to create music for computer applications that they've designed. And another example would be calculus and art teaming up to create 3D models for the volumes of solids of revolution and solids with known bases.
And we continue to use all types of assessments to really identify areas of weakness and how we could take that data and really hone in on our instruction. The last 3 bullets, the common assessments for each discipline, that's ongoing. We're far ahead of the game in math and in some of the, as I just alluded to, in the science. We really need to continue to do our work in our humanities department. But ongoing enhancements to the curriculum, Superintendent Phelan alluded to the PARC assessment. It will be coming down the pike. We're piloting that this year. We're looking at providing targeted supports for all of our testing, the AP, PSAT, SAT, MCAS, and obviously, again, the PARC. And so we look at that, and I need to extend the sentiments expressed by Mr. Walker, when he said he valued the collaborative time, and we have the 4 early release days. The high school was very fortunate last year to pilot 5 days with the support of the committee, and it really allowed us to do a lot of work and really push forward. A lot of that time was spent on NEAS recommendations, which we felt as though with the support and the advice of NEAS, it will push the district forward, and we're continuing those efforts, hopefully starting in February with our early release days. So again, this afternoon, some of our teachers and departments will continue in that work, but we're very gracious for having the opportunity to have these 4 release days, whereas the high school does not have that much common planning time. And finally, ongoing, excellence in the classroom.
So now we're on to excellence in the classroom, which Mr. Jett started to discuss. But we're always looking, we're hoping to, well, not hoping, we are going to use these half days that we're going to have, and we're going to be able to do a lot of wonderful things and continue the work that we started last year. And Mr. Jett mentioned a little bit about it, but we are going to look for increased opportunities to develop more interdisciplinary units. One example is we are going to be sending some of our math and science teachers to a STEM certification program that's provided for by a grant that we did receive, and they're going to be implementing STEM lessons in the current math and science curriculum that we do have. So we're always looking for new opportunities. We're going to use those half days to help that move along. Additionally, we will be using some of the half days to learn about the new evaluation tool, which we just spoke about. We're also going to be focusing always on student engagement and making sure that we can hit every student from the lowest achieving to the highest achieving, and then everybody in the middle. So, we're so grateful for these half days, and we're really looking forward to continuing the good work that we started last year.
So this next slide, we're really going to turn it over to some of our parents, and our students are going to have a lot to say about the slides coming up, because those are some of the initiatives that were near and dear to them. When we talk about collaborative relationships and communication, we list a few things that I just want to point out, but then I have our parent representatives, Betty White and Veronica Guerrero Macia, speak about their interactions with the school and how meaningful or where we can improve or some of the things that they think that we're doing very well in. But the first two I want to bring to your attention because it was something that we really, really worked hard and thought about. In the past, we used to do a grade 8 information night. We said this year that we were going to expand it and open it to grades 5 through 8. Because we felt as though there were some family members in the community who were making decisions on private or parochial schools prior to getting to 8th grade, and we wanted to make sure that we open it up to everybody so they have the opportunity, or at least we give them the opportunity to come in and ask any questions that they may have about the curriculum, about our programs, about our enrichment initiatives, and about our achievement levels. So that's what we did in the fall. As we speak right now, Athletic Director Larry Rooney, Head of Guidance Karen Cahill, and several students are down at the PS currently communicating with the PSPTO and parents again, giving them more information as to what's going on here at the high school and entertaining any questions. Our students are there solely for providing testimonials on their experiences in some of the programs that they're engaged in at the high school. And the same thing for the advanced placement. We were scheduled to have a meeting this Thursday, but because of the events of the week, we pushed it off 1 week. Again, Head of Guidance, Karen Cahill, myself, and Mrs. Cruiser will be meeting with our AP teachers next Thursday, talking about how we can improve our AP, developing the contract, and then we'll do an information night regarding our advanced placement along with our program of study nights, again, inviting middle school students, the parents of middle school students, so they could come in and they could really start hearing it while they're still in the middle school, so they can start planning ahead. I will talk some of the initiatives we have for communicating, but I'll turn it over to Betty or Veronica, whoever would like to speak first regarding the interactions with the school.
I do love that we're Betty and Veronica. So, Mr. Jett has been wonderful, bringing us together at 7 o'clock in the morning for school site councils, and he really keeps us up to date on what's going on. Michelle always, right there, knowing everything that's going on. Any questions we have, we throw out questions out of left field all the time because we have kids in the school, and so things come to us. They always are on top of everything. So it's very comforting to know that our administration knows what's going on in the school, and that they are not only expecting, they are aware of what's going on, and they're anticipating what's coming up as well. I know that for me, the information night, we went for the first time when my daughter was, I think, in 7th grade or 8th grade, 7th grade, so a year earlier, even though we weren't invited, because we wanted to figure out whether the fit would be good for high school. So I think it's excellent that we're now bringing it down to 5th grade, because I know a lot of the private schools encourage the kids to start in the middle schools now. So the earlier we get them enthused about the public school system here in Milton, I think the better we will have for retention of those kids.
I just want to speak about the connection to the contract that just got settled. The collaboration piece and the professional development piece is so important to try to engage the teachers around planning for some of the students who need extra help, who need to be engaged. I think the high school is a very exciting place. There's a lot going on, and there's a ton of student engagement, but you want to try to reach out to everyone, and that's what I think I love about the site council, is that everyone sits, even though it's really early in the morning, the attention and the focus and the energy is really there, so bright and early, and you feel like you have an equal say at the table. I think the students feel comfortable, the respect that everyone has for each other, and even discussing issues like dress code and tardiness and attendance policies, and the complexities of which all of these issues are addressed is very, it's just really terrific. And, so I work in the school system, we don't have collaboration time, and that's one of the things that's probably the most frustrating, is to say, we really need time to talk to each other about these kids, and we don't always have it. So I love the fact that it's really being pushed here at the high school and in the other schools as well, but, Mr. Jett really pushes for that, and I think that's really important, and I think it's going to just, reap benefits for the kids in the school system.
Thank you. The next, if you could go back. The next part of that I will go through rather quickly because we're just touching upon it. We have a program that's coming up that, again, it would touch upon the proficiency gap. We talked a little bit about it before in previous school committee meetings. The calculus project, which is a partnership between the company Replications, and we're hoping to secure a grant through the National Science Foundation as well to help with that. Boston College, we have a number of practicum students that come in and work with our teachers, whether it be in the fall or the spring, and I think it's a win-win situation. It opens the door for a lot of people, and it gives us some new, fresh ideas, but it also enhances the experience, and it gives us helping hands within the building. Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, I wish Vicki McCarthy, who is on our site council, was here. She would be able to elaborate on some of the initiatives that she just passed on to us again this week in terms of alcohol, drug, substance abuse awareness and prevention. And so we're looking to do some of those initiatives in the spring to make sure that we continue to work with our students and allowing them to make good decisions. School-to-career partnerships, very quickly, that is something that a lot of our students have an opportunity, whether it's South Shore Hospital, Biogen, a company out in Cambridge, Mass. So we have a lot of collaborations, but one that's most important to me is the very last one on there. Although it says a Liberty Mutual Partnership, that is a senior project that is done by our very own site council member and high school student, Brendan Hunt. And if Brendan, if you would take the opportunity to talk about it, he's been sharing this, he's been working with selectmen, state police, Milton Police, the schools, community members, and I think it's a very outstanding project. And if you could talk a little bit about that.
So this year, the high school isn't having a walkathon, so my senior project is to plan a 5K road race called the Run for Red Nation to basically benefit sports clubs and activities now that the walkathon isn't. So I filled out like the senior project application, and then I ended up meeting with Mr. Jett, and he mentioned that he knows a Milton High graduate named John Marie Berry, who works at Liberty Mutual, and put me in contact with her. And we've been working, like, we email like every day. They're like the top sponsor of the event, which is really cool. They're putting the event on their Facebook page. They're actually making posters and banners for us, and they gave us a cash donation to go towards the event. But if any of you guys want more information about it, there's a website called runforrednation.webs.com.
Make sure that we get that website out to you. Very quickly, Brendan is being very modest. I've never seen a student, we had the Relay for Life with Rihanna Matthew Green last year that I thought was very organized. This is equally as good as, he's done a lot of the legwork, and he makes it easier for all of us to sit down and improve it. He's met with us, he's emailed me last night at 10 o'clock, 10:30, we're going back and forth, so he's on top of it. One of the things I do want to say to this, outside, which originated from the conversation, there's a possibility that Liberty Mutual has a grant that could be an ongoing grant year after year that they could support sports and clubs, which I think is something that we hope that we can secure in the future. That is something that really recently came about, so it's probably the first time Superintendent Gormley and John Phelan heard it, but we're on it.
Excuse me, I heard about this watching the selectmen's meeting and heard Mr. Hunt referred to with the Milton High Walkathon, so that's how I got my information.
Well, I will say this, I did go to the superintendent's office and ask, because he was really working hard to try to get into the select.
Congratulations and thank you.
So that was a project. Very quickly, respectfully.
Before you go on, can we just say that website, Run for Ed Nation?
Red.
Oh, Red. Oh, I get it. I was thinking Ed Education, sorry. Run for Red Nation.
We just
Put it
got
on the website?
Yeah, we just got the information last night. We got the approval for everything last night. I think at about 11 o'clock, I emailed Brendan back saying it's a go. So that, we'll hope to get that up and running and make sure that gets out to all of the families.
Thank you, Brendan.
Mr. Walker? Sorry.
And I'll be making a contribution and maybe walking but not running, but I'll also be willing to sponsor a pool as to whether Ms. Padera will win the race or get, or get beaten again by middle school and...
It wasn't again.
and middle school and high school cross-country girls, so I'm there. I'll run that pool every time.
And what's the date? So we'll put that on the website.
I'm with you. I know you can do it.
I would like to say the way that those middle school and high school kids are training, I think I have very little shot, but maybe you could get the date. Do you have a date?
It's April 13th. It's a Sunday. It starts at 9 a.m. and it's just the regular Milton route, so it starts and ends at Cunningham Elementary.
So maybe you could do, the week before is the Milton's first half marathon. So maybe if you join hands, they can, if you do 2, you can double your benefit.
I think very quickly, Brendan was also very conscious of other road races that were happening in the community. I mean, he really thought about it, not just in our community, but outside other communities that we would have to compete with. So he's very strategic in that. And I should give credit to Nick Fitzgerald, who is his senior advisor on that as well.
And the funds are going to clubs that...
Sports clubs and activities. Sports clubs and activities, absolutely.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Very quickly, the last couple of things that we have on there, respect for human differences. There's plenty of things that we do with our diversity committee, but also our site council committee, and we're talking about it. We have the school-wide Martin Luther King initiative that we're doing in collaboration with MICA, the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, but mainly Rabbi Benjamin. He came and he met with some of our seniors. They have this year's theme. All of the Milton Public Schools are either participating by writing essays, artwork, or poems. We have a program called In It. In It is for initiative. We have student leaders that write the essays. The winners of those essays go to a leadership conference in the summer for 5 days, and they come back and they work and they try to incorporate initiatives within the school for social justice. And it's a wide array of different activities, and they were actually just meeting with one of the representatives from In It this afternoon. So I don't know where that is all, because we were in a meeting this afternoon, so I will follow up once I get that. Finally, at the bottom, positive affirmations. We try to, and this is a spin-off also from the health and wellness group that takes place in meets. But our students, when we talked about awareness, substance abuse awareness and alcohol awareness, our students were really vocal about this. Not that many students really have major issues at the high school, so they were saying instead of taking a negative approach, again, using a positive approach, and our students really, now obviously being a principal, you don't always hear everything, but we have some great students that are doing a lot of great things, and we don't want people to feel like this is it's a problem area, but it's definitely an area that we want to keep on the radar and be proactive about it. We continue with our anti-bullying, substance abuse awareness, the Teen Safe Initiative with Dr. Knight. We look to have that up and running again. Liberty Mutual, we talked about it. They do a simulated car crash car simulation. They did it last year. They'll do it again this year, and also the work that we're doing with the Run for Red Nation. And then the International Diversity Celebration is something that people, again, that came out of the diversity, but we also talked about it in the site council, celebrating our differences because they are strengths. They are strengths for the community, and so we're in the preliminary stages of how we're going to do something in the spring to kind of bring that forward. And then finally, our advisory period. We continue to do some wonderful things at our advisory period. Today, every single advisory period showed a video of PSATs and how to read the scores. That link and all of that information was then sent home to all parents. So again, try to keep people as informed as possible. That is something that we did for the first time this year. So now students know how to read, hopefully read their PSAT scores and understand it, and then we're sending that information home to the parents as well. And then finally, risk-taking innovation very quickly. We continue with our debate team, mock trials, speech, robotics, senior project, as we just alluded to. There's plenty more. We highlighted that one because Brendan was on Team Life Smarts. We had our national championship Jack Hagler last year. We hope to repeat with equal success. continue to provide specialized programming. Mr. Kelly alluded to some of this. We hope to get an AP boot camp up and running, advanced placement boot camp, really funneling the calculus project. We have our student support team, the bridge program, and our homework club. We could go to the next. And then finally, this is the one that the students, they've been battling with the administration on. I think they have some great points. I do want to preface, before I turn it over to them, I said, don't be nervous, because in the site council, they disagree with a lot of things that we have in terms of rules. We get that. But I would just say that they're very mature, articulate, and professional about the way that they present it. So I will let them talk to some of these issues that are up there that they wanted to, I don't want to say challenge, but they think that we should revisit.
My name is Morgan Conley. I'm a junior representative, as I've said before. The one thing that I'd like to talk about is the snack time. It's one that I've been pushing for because I have third lunch every day, and for anyone that doesn't know, third lunch starts at 1 o'clock, and school starts at 7:45. So from 7:45 to 1, it's strictly prohibited to not eat anything, and at that time, the school day starts to wear down on you and starts to get difficult, and if you take out food, it's taken away from you. So a simple 5-minute snack time during one of the periods where you could have like a banana or, just a little snack to kind of get through the rest of the day and get all the way to lunch. That's something I'm pushing for.
Just to touch on another subject we've been talking about, the backpacks and locker use. It's been discussed to maybe backpacks won't be allowed in classrooms, so we'd have to use our lockers. I'm personally not a fan of it. I don't use my locker now. I have all my books in my bag. My locker's so out of the way for my schedule that it just wouldn't work out. So we've been talking about it. Me and Ms. Cruiser actually went back and forth a little bit about it. Yeah, it's just something we're talking about.
How did that go for you?
So these are just some of the items that we're discussing as we review the handbook and the policies and procedures that we have for the high school. And like Mr. Jett said, the students have been wonderful. The parents have been wonderful. The teachers, everybody gets involved in the discussions. And we will be looking more at the attendance and tardy policy that we do have at the high school, and also dress code, which is every year comes up. So we'll have more discussions about that as we go forward.
If you flick to the next one. That kind of concludes our presentation, but what we did for the school committee members, we provided some highlights that have already taken place or things that we forecasted are coming up in the future. I will say this, regarding some of the initiatives the students talked about, they're very valid concerns, but we always err on the side of safety, things that I know a lot of parents every year. Being a former middle school principal, you always heard about the weight of the backpacks on the students and carrying them around, coupled with the fact when you get into the winter, especially like the last couple of days, winter jackets and backpacks in classrooms, in science classes. So, one of the things I share with the students, it's always about the safety for a number of reasons. And there's always, as you talked about with the negotiation, the ability to negotiate and compromise. But they have a compelling argument, and we'll continue to tease it back and forth. And if anything is going to change, we will definitely bring forward that information to the school committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mrs. Padilla.
Well, I can personally say that I think we talked about this last meeting in terms of health and wellness with the whole initiative with fueling and exercise being important as well. And I would say that we did talk about snack time because, personally, all of us were talking about the meeting where they denied us lunch for an extra hour to show us how hard it was to listen when you're just thinking about lunch and the plates on your table and wanting to eat. And it does seem, especially with later lunches, it's got to be easier to concentrate if you're not feeling hungry and concentrating on what to eat. And especially for kids that are active and, walking to school, and maybe they've been up early because they went to the 7 o'clock site council meeting or the, meeting before school, or practices before and after school. So, if you're going to fuel these kids to train for this upcoming 5K, which apparently I've got to already start training for because I've got kids on there, but I've always been a big fan of the snack, and kids shouldn't have to sneak snacks, I think, which is what I've also heard, they sneak them in the bathrooms. So, that's my input on the snack time.
Can I add one other thing?
Yeah.
One other concern for us is also, even though we do have the smart cart, the breakfast cart in the morning, and we do have breakfast in the morning available to all the students, there still are a number of students who may come to school without eating something.
Right.
So, in addition to maybe having a second lunch or a third lunch, they might not have fueled themselves at home even before they came to school. So
Yeah.
that's one of the items that we were discussing too.
Well, can I just follow up? And that was one of the other things they talked about, is having, because, some kids, it's not so much that they don't have time. It's really hard to eat early sometimes. You're just not hungry at 6:30 in the morning, but maybe you're hungry at 8. And so one of the ideas they were talking about is having breakfast in the classroom. And I know you can do work and eat breakfast at the same time, or have a breakfast snack at the same time. So that was one of the ideas. Not everybody's a fan of it, I understand, but it is one idea to save time, so you're not taking time out of learning, but you're still fueling your audience. And then, even having breakfast a little later at 8 might be preferential, and it tides you over a little bit longer. So that's another idea they brought up at the conference.
Mr. Walker?
I would just offer that Ms. Padera wasn't here for the raging discussion that the school committee had about this issue 2 years ago, but Dr. Arangio implemented his policy. We'll wait for your guidance on how that should work. James, where are we on the calculus project?
Very good question. We just had another meeting yesterday. We already have a flyer. We were scheduled to go next, possibly the 21st and 23rd, to do an informational night, but we might have to push it back 1 week because of the events that are taking place. But we're all ready to go in terms of identifying 7th grade students for the program. We're opening it up to approximately 80 or so, 85 or so students, hopefully narrowing down to start off with the first cohort of approximately 30. Myself, Mr. Phelan, Courtney Walsh, who is going to be the director here at the high school, met with Dr. Spalding and Life Laderos at the middle school. So we had that meeting yesterday. Our hope is to get the flyer out, if it hasn't gone out already today, via email. If not, it will definitely go tomorrow with the invite to select families. We hope to have Adrian Mims, who is the representative from Replications, co-sign and endorse that he could switch the meeting for the following week. So that's what we're just simply waiting for. And then our goal is to do a couple of informational sessions. I think Assistant Superintendent John Phelan had some great ideas. After the information, maybe do a little, or a weekly reminder, sending it out to parents to keep it on their radar. And then if we have to do another informational night further in the spring, whether it be March, we'll do it again. But our hope is we start with the first cohort this summer for 3 weeks here at the high school, Monday through Thursday, from 8 to 1.
Great.
Would you explain to the viewing public and those who don't understand the goal of the calculus project?
The goal of the calculus project, and I want to make myself very clear on this, it's not remedial, it's pre-teaching, and the goal is to inspire some of our underrepresented groups, or our groups that have the proficiency gap, to get them in line to take the most rigorous courses, particularly in the area of math. And by the time they get to the high school, they can not only get into a calculus course, but successfully pass a calculus course. So the goal will be to give them this 3-week summer experience, and then free tutoring throughout their career after school, throughout the year. So we identify students in 7th grade, and they do it in the bridge of their 7th and 8th grade year, and high school teachers will be teaching it. Mr. Kelly has been, I know he's informed with it, he's not going to be doing it this summer, but I think he's informed with it, and Courtney Walsh has already met with a couple of our teachers that identified it would take on this. They write the curriculum, they work with the students, they give them the skills that they need, pre-teach them, then there'll be some conversations with professional development with the 8th grade math teachers as well, in ongoing, hopefully, and then by the time the students get to the high school, then we could monitor them a little closely. So this year is one cohort, we hope to add on another cohort the following year, and so forth and so on, and hopefully we have a nice little pipeline where we have a number of students that are really pushing themselves academically. And so that's...
And the model's been very successful?
Absolutely.
In the Brookline Public Schools?
Yes. And it's a couple of schools in New York. It shifted from last year when we came before the committee. It was Milton High, Newton North, Newton South, Brookline, and then 2 schools in New York. Now I think it's Cathedral High. They just shifted it to one of the schools, but Newton is still in there, along with Milton and a couple of schools from New York.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
First, I think a 5-minute snack time would be a great idea for the school committee. So perhaps we can put that on the agenda for next meeting. Just quickly, James, there's a reference on one of the slides to Naviance College Planning. What is that?
Naviance is a communication tool, is very similar to our email blast, but it allows students to go on and do their college application online, their surveys. It's a way of sending out alerts to parents and students. The students get it, but it keeps them in the loop constantly. We also use it to notify students of community service opportunities.
So do they all get it? All students get it?
All students get it. All students get it.
So we have guidance during the advisory, and they work through making sure that every student in every grade is signed up to use Naviance, and the emails go out to the students and the family members, like Mr. Jett said, about community service, about college planning. They do if you want to speak to it too, because you can prove it.
I check Naviance probably, I'm only a junior, so I check it once a month, and right now it's just out of curiosity to see what colleges I could get into, because it has a really unique aspect of it where I can check and see if my GPA, if my SAT scores match up to which college I'd like to get into. And so it's very useful, you know.
Any idea how widely used it is, or is it,
In the school?
By the students?
All of us.
Yeah, it's tough to tell, I suppose.
It's not tough to tell. You could, the guidance counselors to log on and see how many hours or how many times Mr. Zulus clicked on and checked. So the guidance counselors could do that.
Can Brendan speak to it?
So I just finished applying to all my schools, and to do that, you have to go on Naviance and choose all the colleges you're applying to, so your guidance counselors know, and they can send your materials there. So I know that every senior mostly have used it, so.
And just to say one thing, Naviance is I went to tour Norwich University 2 months ago, and one of the biggest things they were talking about just the application process and all that goes into it, and they said that most of their applications actually come through Naviance, and they said their Naviance account got either messed up or shut down for a week, and they said they missed almost all of their applications just because so many high schools use Naviance. So that kind of just shows how widely spread it is used now and how helpful it is.
Can the parents get access to it too, or is it just?
Yeah. Okay. Parents do have access, so parents have an account and students have an account.
And the director of guidance is the one who sends out the email communication, so it's not just a communication piece, it's also it's learning and style inventory testing, for college planning. It's got so many parts to it. It's incredible.
Mr. Zulus, you have a long way to go before you need to worry about it.
I'm planning already.
If I might, it's very interesting, and school committee members take different interests, and their interests and their work benefit the school district. So interestingly, Mr. Zulus is asked to work with the Milton High School guidance, and as a team member to learn about the guidance department and to bring some improvements and enhancements, so he'll be educated very fast and probably be on the other side about Naviance next year.
I'd just like to make a few comments. First of all, thank you for this presentation, and thank you for being here. It was very informative, and I'm a big advocate for the split and having the data be in a separate meeting. I think it would be wonderful for you to, at some point, maybe just highlight some of the things you have on your highlight pages, because there are many of them, but there's some great things that are happening there in addition to what you've already articulated. But in particular, I want to talk about the risk-taking and innovation for education page, because my sons graduated 6 and 8 years ago, and I am shocked to see how many things are on this list that were not there. And it's just so exciting to see the leaps and bounds that, that are being taken every year to improve the opportunities for the school, for the students at the high school. And I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and I think that the quality of the students that we see come before us every year is really just so impressive and makes us feel so proud of all that you're doing and that we do as a school committee to support the work that's happening in the schools and the work that the teachers and the administration do. But I think that this presentation really just speaks to all of the opportunities that are there for children today in a public school system that frankly weren't there just even a few years ago, and those opportunities are growing every day. So I want to thank you, because they don't just fall in your lap. There's a lot of work that goes into finding those opportunities and making them happen in the schools, and it's a huge benefit to not only the students and their families, but the community as a whole. So I want to say thank you for that. Mrs. Padera?
I just had one more comment. I heard really positive things about bringing in the grades 5 through 8 to the high school. I had a lot of friends that came and really enjoyed it and learned some new things about the high school that they had not known. And so I think that's a great idea. My question is, I wonder if we could ever, because really the real action happens during the day, coming to see the high school at night is great, and you can see the facilities, but I know that I've had the opportunity to come to the high school during the day and see what's going on, which is really exciting, and seeing all the wonderful teaching that's going on. Sometimes the private schools do that, where they bring in, they make appointments, like a small group of parents that want to come in and visit the school during the day, and you'd have, a representative bring them to different classes and see what's going on during the day. Have we ever considered doing that?
We absolutely have considered that, and I've been in conversations with Karen Cahill, the guidance department as well, because they would be the ones, in some cases, leading it to talk to the parents about it. They were talking about something like maybe in June, possibly doing it last year. Ms. Cruiser, along with the student leaders, went down to the middle school, and did a little orientation with the 8th graders before they came up. But that is something that we'll definitely talk about. Even when parents have called and asked to do a private tour, even though it has not been widely publicized, we never turn people away. We have always invited them in, and we've always given the tour and answered any questions that they had.
That's fantastic. And then just 2 more things. So, and I just wanted to comment, as Ms. Sheridan said, we have so many opportunities, and I'm thinking with pride about our debate team, because there was an article in the paper last week about debate and speech being one of the most important things that people were learning in high schools right now, and that is being a big draw into colleges, and it's where some of the money's at. Did you read that too? Yeah. So, I mean, and I think, that's just my opinion, but I think we have one of the best debate teams, so I think that was fantastic to hear. And then also the some of the things you were talking about, Ms. Cruiser, with the using art and with other subjects, art, and I think it was calculus. I love those different ideas. I just think having people collaboratively work together and bringing art into, a classroom, maybe students that aren't taking art but using art in a different way, or maybe students that haven't had the opportunity to fit art into their schedules but still feel creative and would love to do that with calculus, or making calculus memorable to them in a different way. I think that those are fantastic things, and the more we can do that, the better.
Great. Okay. Yes, sure. He's a pro at this.
Yeah.
Just going off like what Ms. Padera said, like we've talked a couple times, I think it was for certain professional days, was the chemistry dance.
Yes.
Ms. Padera loves, there was a dance, like you do a dance to learn certain types of chemistry. And like just going off that, that's like something that students obviously appreciate so much. It helps so much when you're like kind of getting out of the book, like keeping your head in a book. and especially with chemistry, and like kind of getting involved. And then going off, like, I believe all the student government members here are the junior, senior, freshman representatives. And I think the points that we're reviewing are definitely the most talked about points in the high school. So I feel like we are representing like the school as much as possible. And these points are definitely very important to every student at the high school. So I think by reviewing these, we're only helping and showing like the face of the students at the high school. Yeah.
We're going to have to do that chemistry dance. We're going to have to make that happen.
Thanks, Mike. Mike's going to lead it. Right, well, thank you so much. It's always great to have you. Thank you.
Yes.
Nice.
Thank you. One. What's wrong with your left? I know.
Try one.
That I finished at 3 o'clock.
This is like a,
Is it on?
this is like a brother relationship.
It should be in the Dropbox. I mean, in the Google Docs. Because it came out the same. Sometimes that.
Yes.
It's an excellent presentation, thank you.
Sure.
Are you going to move on to the program of studies?
Yes, at this time, myself, along with Vice Principal Michelle Cruiser, will go through. We just did a quick overview. We submitted to the school committee members in advance a listing of different changes. The only one that necessarily changes any requirements in terms of the graduation requirement was the speech. And I'll just preface that very quickly, and then we'll talk about it when we get to it in the line items. But speech was something that we talked about last year when I came before the school committee. It was in abeyance for several years, and we talked about piloting it for this year with the hope of putting it in for potentially a graduation requirement. The first change on page 2, I just furnished you, and I apologize you didn't get the program of studies book in advance. But on page 2, the learning expectations, basically what we did is we just switched them, and I could go over them very quickly. We changed them a little bit to reflect the exact replica of what we did for our 21st century learning expectations that we did and presented to you last year for our NEAS presentation. So the first one, academic expectations, we chunked them out in 2. There's a total of 7. The first one was to effectively apply critical thinking skills to solve problems. The second one was to communicate skillfully and effectively through written, visual, and technological means. The third one is to apply tools and technology to a variety of authentic tasks. The fourth is to demonstrate connections between and among subjects to enhance understanding of the work.
Can I ask you to stop for 1 second, because we're not knowing where you are. You
Oh, I'm
said
sorry.
page 2?
Page 2 at the bottom.
Page 2, the expectations for learning in the old book.
Oh, so you're talking about what's in the old book, and
Yes.
we're looking at the new book.
You're looking at the old book.
Oh, okay.
These are proposals for next year.
Okay,
So that's what I'm telling you that is changing. I wish I provided that for you in advance.
right.
So it's a little bit of the changes.
We have the change sheet that you gave us, the
But this
changes,
just goes in a little more
but this gives the
specific.
specifics, exactly.
This was a little more specific, saying what those changes are. This
I
one,
think you switched your mic off, sorry.
testing.
Yep, thanks.
This is probably the most lengthy, and again, it's exact replica of what our 21st century learning expectations are. Because we approved them last year, the program of studies booklet was already out. We're just incorporating them into the next booklet, the program of studies for next year. On page 3 in the old booklet, if you notice, it says, it doesn't have speech listed as a graduation requirement. That is the only one that we're proposing that has implications on graduation requirement, and that was, we were going to make it a requirement for all sophomores to take speech. I think committee member Becky Padera just alluded to debate in speech, and basically it allows our students to think critically, to argue their point, to really get, it helps them with their college interviewing process. It is a great course. We piloted it this year with the hopes that it'll be mandatory for all of our sophomores taking it next year for half a semester. And I'll go over the description. There's a description that will be in the new booklet as well. The third one, page 5, schedule changes to the new protocol. It doesn't really change the actual process. It just, the only change that we put in was identifying a chain of command. You go to a teacher, you go to the department head, and then to guidance. That's the only change that we put in to the schedule process. Because what was happening, we were finding sometimes parents would go directly to, whether it be an administrator or to a department head, and request a change. And I'll tell you the reason why we put that in there. To try to schedule the students in the high school is a very complicated thing. It's kind of it's a great problem to have. We offer a plethora of different enrichment experience in terms of our electives. We offer many different levels, from AP to honors to college prep. And so the reason why we put that, and we make it a little more difficult, we send out our program of studies very early on. We have the program of studies night, February 25th. We'll talk about the importance of really looking through your schedules. But once the summer hits, we really hone in and try to tighten up the schedule. To have students jumping around in the middle or switching so many classes in September creates a nightmare. And so we really want students and parents to be very thoughtful as to what they select. And we won't make any changes until the students go through until the end of the first quarter, unless, of course, this one is made, a recommendation made by a teacher. So the only thing was the chain of command in terms of that change. The second one was introduction to business. Now, 1 and 2, both 2.5 credits. We're offering one first half of the year, one second half of the year. What we were finding, what it did, it allows students to have more flexibility. It was done on accessibility. We wanted to be efficient, effective, and strategic with our scheduling. Allow students to really explore that. And then I have a description on page 19. We have a description for speech. I can get that full description. I don't want to bore you with reading it, but it just gives an overall view of what we would cover, what the curriculum would look like in a speech course. And then number 22 and 23, where it says students would need to purchase project materials for clothing, that is taken out. We're not charging students for materials as part of that elective. Introduction to Biotechnology, which is a new 2.5 credit course, which is a semester course. And I'm going to talk about that one in the biotech, the 5 credit course, which is a full year course. I'm going to talk about them simultaneously. We only change that 2.5 credit course if you endorse the full year course. So basically what happens right now, Mr. Damiani teaches the biotech. He teaches a semester course and then a second semester course. What he wants to do with the biotech lab is really delve into the different topics, whether it's DNA, immunology, studying of the immune system, proteins, and he can provide a more in-depth experience for the students. It doesn't require any additional staffing. Basically what would happen, he could do the course simultaneously in the same class. For students who, because the topics will be different as you move along, the students who jump in the beginning of the year, they could take a 2.5, and some could remain for the full year, and then students could jump in at the second part of the year because it's not a major prerequisite for the first half of the year. So it's a course that could run simultaneously. Wow. Now, if everything was, if it was a perfect world, and we were able to secure a more of a department head or something like that, and we needed to, and we could do if the enrollment required, we could do 2 half-credit courses, 2 semester courses, and then 1 full-year course, which could really give them. But that is a stretch, we know that, but we put that in there because we think this is a valuable course. The other thing that we think that may happen, because it is a great experience for the students, it may draw students from anatomy and physiology or other courses, which those classes will be reduced, and you could pull up more in that science course.
As for more changes, on page 38, the AP curriculum has changed for Physics B. Physics B is the class we offer right now. Starting next school year, they've split the course into AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 with 2 separate curriculum. It's just the AP Physics B course was too huge, so College Board decided to split it. So we will be offering both AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2. Now, there will be a prerequisite for AP Physics 2 that you have to take the Physics 1 or honors physics. In terms of next year, most students are most likely going to be in the Physics 1. There might be a possibility. A lot depends on enrollment, what the enrollment's going to look like. We may choose to run one and not the other next year. There may be a possibility to have both simultaneously in the same class. So we need to look at what the numbers are for those courses. But we are not planning to add any more staff for that course. The next one is MCAS Science Prep. We actually do run an MCAS Science Prep, and we have in the past. We did not have a course description in there, so we want to add the appropriate course description for the MCAS Science Prep class for the bio. On page 43, what we proposed is to take the computer courses that have been listed in a separate section under the business department and to list them under the technology department. So the computer courses that we're talking about would be Tech Essentials, Computer Tech, Digital Video, and MHS Wildcat News. So rather than having them listed under the business department as they formerly were, we're going to move them under the technology department in the future. On page 45, we have a new course description for the visual literacy course that it's been updated. And in addition, on page 45, we are going to introduce a new Visual Literacy 2 course, and this doesn't require additional staffing. Sometimes the Visual Literacy, the first course that I spoke about, has lower enrollment, so we want to see if we can offer a different course. We might be able to run the Literacy 2 course instead of the Visual Literacy 1 course on certain years. We may be able to run them concurrently in the same classroom with modeling of the coursework with Visual Literacy 2 to the Visual Literacy 1. But there are different ways that we can work it to either run one or the other or both at the same time. But we wanted to give more options to the arts department. And lastly, on page 56, we will be adding a description of the the job of adjustment counseling to the handbook, which is not included under special education or anything like that, but have its own special section as it should be.
And I think it was very important the rationale behind that is that we have students who may need services throughout the year, and we didn't want people to think that this was solely a special ed issue. But again, adjustment counseling is just support for students making adjustments, whether it's changing the dynamics of the family, moving, financial situation, any type of stresses that students have, students moving into the district, new. So we put that in there. And then as far as the AP courses, again, although we're proposing it, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to run it all based on enrollment. As you recall, last year, we offered 20 AP courses. This year, we went down to 18 because of enrollment in one and the challenges of the Spanish Lit. We wanted to really hone in on the Spanish language.
Can I just clarify one thing you just said? So you're adding on the adjustment counselor. Is that under, it's a heading of its own? So it's not under special offerings, or you said
it's not under special
ed.
education, and when I said we're adding on adjustment counselor, we're not. We're adding the description into the booklet.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I understood that, but so it
okay.
will just be its own heading under,
Special programming.
right.
The plan is to list it under special programs.
Okay,
Not
that's,
under special
that was my
education.
question.
It is not
Okay.
a special
Right.
education program.
So additional programming.
I want to thank the high school school committee member, Mary Kelly, had always asked for the program of studies, it should go in front of the school committee, and many times I gave it to you after it had gone to the publisher, and for you to detail the changes. I think it is evidence to the time that you put into the curriculum at Milton High School and evaluating the choices, the student achievement, the results, and the staff. I want to thank you for the work you put into that program of studies.
And can I just add one more thing? I overlooked No More Marketing. It was, basically, marketing was added, it was part of the program of studies for the last couple of years, but it never ran separately. But the skills in the content that was taught in the marketing is now infused into the introduction to business. So I want to make that clear to anyone.
Do you think having Courtney Walsh overseeing math, the technology, and the business, overseeing all those courses, has contributed to evaluating what skills, tailoring the courses, integrating the curriculum?
Without a doubt, I think Courtney Walsh is definitely a diamond for the district. I think she's a very talented, gifted, articulate, and very professional individual that really, in one year's time, really looked at every single one of the programs, and she continues to look at the different programs to try to make sure that they're working and functioning better.
I would also mention...
That mic isn't on again, sorry.
I would also like to mention A.J. Melanson, who is one of the business teachers, because he started a business advisory committee that we meet a few times a year, and we have parents, former students, people in industry, just community members come and meet, and I meet with them, and AJ meets with them, Courtney Walsh, and also the digital video teacher. We all meet and we discuss, what are the skills that our students need, whether they're going to college or if they're going out to the workforce, and what it looks like here in education and what it actually looks like in the real world, in a business setting, and the type of things that they have issues with in their workplace that we can address here at the high school. And so that was one of the reasons why with the marketing course, we put more of the marketing into the intro to business, and we've been really beefing up the curriculum for that course and also for the tech essentials course. So there's been a revamp, and that is a lot with having to do with Courtney Walsh and AJ Melanson. And Jennifer Troy has helped out with that too.
Amazing.
The librarian.
Todd Girls is in that group.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any questions? Mrs. Kelly?
So I thank you for bringing this in a very timely fashion. I think this is great. The work that obviously you put into this every year is to be commended. So a couple things. You're introducing new courses, which are great. You're saying there's no additional staffing, which in a tough budgetary year is also great. What kinds of supplies and materials are required for these new courses? And I guess I'm just from a budgetary perspective asking, you have that in the budget, or how's that being worked out? And the visual literacy, I think, is one of them. I don't know quite frankly, I don't even know what visual literacy is, but, what is the course that's being proposed, and what are the types of materials and supplies that would be needed?
Very good question. Visual literacy, they're using movie clips, YouTube clips, social media, things like that, and really thinking about it and having conversations about it, and critical thinking, problem solving, interpreting, and things like that. There's really none. It's very minimum. A lot of the curriculum could be accessed offline, and they're free things. I had that conversation with Dr. Burdette. Same thing with the biolab. Unfortunately, I will say this: anytime you do science, there are consumables. But I will say the partnership with Biogen and a couple of different science organizations that we have. Paul Damiani gets resources every single year, whether it's our gels or equipment. This year we just had our microscopes service. So there's a lot of partnerships out there. People are constantly looking for ways to kind of supplement the consumables or things that we need. We have Mrs. Tom, who's working with partnership with MIT, so we're hoping to get MIT involved. So yeah, there will be a cost. I don't know fully what that cost will be. My hope is anything that we have, we don't have broken equipment, that we're able to sustain the equipment we have, but really banking on building and forging additional relationships to get there. But no additional cost in staffing, but unfortunately, you got to pay for the consumables every year.
Great. Mrs. Kelly?
And then the other, I guess, issue that I'd like to raise is the speech. I don't think that speech should be a graduation requirement. I think if you want to offer speech as a class, I think that's fabulous. I'm not sure we're debating in speech, because we do have a debate class, do we not? Is that not a present offering? I don't know where the line is there. We haven't had speech as a graduation requirement for, I don't know how many years now. I think if you look at other high schools, I'm not sure that we see that as a graduation requirement. So I guess I would be reluctant to vote as a school committee member that we add that as a requirement. That doesn't mean that offering speech as a class is not something that you should pursue, but that's basically where I stand on the graduation requirement issue.
Could you speak to that, Mr. Jett?
Absolutely. One of the things, and again, I think it originated from this group here last year when we came before you. The question was, what happened to speech? Where did it go? We felt as though we hear a lot about public speaking, being able to stand before an audience, to back up your data, your facts, to do interviews, to present, and we think that these are life skills that we think that have put our students far above many others. And one of the ways that we figured we wanted to make sure every student had access to it. So by offering it, oftentimes students are going to select something else, which we get that, but we wanted to make sure it was a requirement, and we think that it would give our students a competitive edge.
I think, did Evie want to say something? Abby, sorry.
I was going to say, being a senior and taking speech, I think that it is, if anything, should definitely be a requirement to graduate, because my class, Miss Crowley teaches my class, and it's filled with freshmen to seniors, kids who, like me, who do drama, and people who do sports and are really quiet, but just coming into January, the improvement in comfort that people now have just public speaking, simply because of this class. I mean, these skills are going to follow us everywhere. And I mean, if there's going to be a requirement for fine arts and applied arts, I definitely think speech should be there too.
Let's hear the other students. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry.
And then just going off that, I also, I am a very kind of outspoken individual. I sometimes just don't stop talking. And I believe that public speaking, next to technology essentials, we're coming into an age where technology is so big in our lives. Every second we're using some type of technology, whether on our phones, doing homework on the computer. And technology has become such a big part of our life. But by using technology, we're losing our public speaking skills by sitting behind a computer. And it's not the same if I'm to email Miss Cruiser on a certain topic than if I am to go to her office and actually really present my topic or present my argument to her. It's public speaking is just such an important thing, whether it's a job interview, college interview, so many different things. And I feel, in my opinion, that's the most important thing kind of threatening our society is the fact that very few people know how to talk nowadays. It's you'll talk to a kid, I did a presentation, a 10-minute oral presentation in my AP US history class, and it's not easy to go up, obviously Ms. Cruiser and Mr. Jett would know, it's not easy to go up and talk for straight 10 minutes. That's a long time when you think about talking. It's not easy. Yeah. So standing in front of a class, or when we have to give our speeches for student government, you're standing in front of a couple hundred kids. It's so important to be able to really speak artfully and use that to your advantage in life. So I think it's very, very important.
And if I could add a piece to that, it's not just about the speaking, it's about doing the research and getting your supporting your argument with facts, and being able to have a meaningful rebuttal with someone, and trying to be persuasive in the way that you do that. So there's a lot that we think our students could benefit from, and we want to make sure that every student has access to it, and not making it a requirement. We feel as though those who shy away from public speaking will never take it.
I think Amanda wanted to say something too.
I take speech next semester, and I'm really looking forward to it because I don't know who remembers last school committee meeting, but I just mumbled my words when I was talking. So there's that. And also, I can't wait. Bleh. See, there we go. Public speaking is really important, and I'm really glad that it should be a graduating requirement because there are kids like me who want to stand in the corner and not talk at all. So it's going to be fun, and I can't wait to take it next semester.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Padera, did you want to speak to this as well?
Yeah, I actually, some of my point was already made, but I think that was part of when I was reading the article about speech and debate being critical now is really because the infusion of technology and kids using young adults using technology and speech not being as big of a part of our lives. And I think we're doing a real service by requiring it and making sure our students are not only prepared, in technology and other areas, but making sure they're still prepared to, go to a job interview or a college interview and be able to speak, not just write something on the computer and send something in a text. And if we don't do that, even if other schools aren't doing it, maybe we should be ahead of the times and do that. But my other point was that, there are students that are going to not really want to take that, and those are the students we should be, striving to get them forward, because I think it was Mr. Walker and I were talking one day in a school committee pre-meeting or something about how, even now we're seeing people that come to an interview or come to speak about themselves, and they can't present themselves or answer questions in a very logical fashion. They're just not used to not writing it down or not something electronically. So I do think it's becoming more and more critical because it's just not something we can take for granted anymore that kids know how to do.
Mr. Zulus.
Oh, please. No, so what's the downside of having it as a requirement as opposed to an elective? There must be some balance, right? What's the downside?
What's the cost of personnel?
The downside, what's the negative?
The downside is if you have it as an elective, then some students who might need it won't take it.
No, I mean the downside of having it as a requirement, just so I understand.
I don't think there is a downside.
Well,
to committee member,
I think it would be a matter of once you make it a requirement, you have to offer it, and you have to ensure that all the students are able to take it, and you have enough sections to do that.
Got
So
it.
at some point in time, whether it be this year or next year and years to come, when budget priorities
The
need to be
financial
discussed,
cost.
you have
Got it.
to have that as
Got it.
part of the debate.
Do you anticipate this year, this year you used existing personnel for the
We
classes?
use
Next year
exist-
you'll use existing personnel
Absolutely.
by other English electives?
Yes.
So which
It's a
electives will not be able to be, because essentially what you're saying is one whole cohort needs
Right.
to next
I wish I
sophomore
looked
year.
at the numbers, and I apologize before I came up here. We have a number of students that are already taking a speech for a half year, and then they're taking it again for the second half of the year. I think that I'm almost certain we'll be able to accommodate it depending on enrollment. This year, our enrollment, we had a dip in our enrollment. Currently, right now, the 8th grade at the Pierce is hovering around 308. Not all of those kids come up. Some kids go on to Blue Hills Tech, students go on a private or program school. We hope that they all come to the high school, and we'll just have to increase some of those class sizes as well.
And so I agree with all the points that have been made. I truly believe, and in the past years, and we've been talking about this for years, what we've talked about is, rather than making a separate course, make it a core part of every course, that presenting, that doing research, that presenting your arguments, et cetera, will be part of every single course that's taught in the Milton High School. And that's what we've talked about. Obviously, we haven't gotten there, but that to me is where it all, because I think anybody would benefit from a speech course. What I want to see happening is integral almost to the whole core learning, is that it's all part of everything that every single day, throughout the day, they'll be utilizing those skills. And so that's why I'm sort of against sort of sanctioning off that. because my fear is that we will back away from within individual courses getting to that level of detail. Did you know what I'm saying? So that's my reluctance to making it a requirement of graduation.
So you'll have to, whatever the committee decides. What, I think the history is that it was a requirement, and every year you voted to put the requirement in abeyance.
Yes.
Right, and that was mostly budgetary.
Right.
And again, this is, being here for 10 years, this is why I'm sort of raising this flag, is that if we do this, we need to make a commitment from a financial perspective that this basically becomes a trump of all the things that are listed here in terms of requirements. It becomes a high priority. And, you know, does that make sense on a next year and going forward basis? Obviously, a committee can change their mind every single year. It doesn't make for a good continuum, and it can be very disruptive for, you know, the cohort of people that are in the high school now. But it's something to be considered.
So it would be a half-year course, it would be an elective. It would be one of the electives for the sophomores.
So for sophomores.
Would it be strictly, like, you take it sophomore year, just like
Yes.
technology essentials is freshman year?
We did talk about that, depending
You
on
already have
different
some taken.
services, but there'd probably be some select individual cases that we might have to look at. For the most part, we like to keep it all sophomores, but obviously, you know, you may have students with an IEP, or they have, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into it that we might have to really hone in on a small handful of.
Right, you should say that.
And students who come in after sophomore year
absolutely.
would have to take it. I just have one little question about the debate team. Is that grade level specific as well? I mean, the debate class that's offered?
It's not.
Okay, so at some point, could it be that you could either take the speech requirement or the debate? I mean, it might be that there are some options there. I know they're different things. I'm just, I was thinking of that as Mrs. Kelly was making her suggestions. Any further questions? Sorry.
And then just like one more point I would like to make, like, I feel that in Milton High, we're very fortunate, like, we have teachers that don't just stand in front of a classroom and kind of lecture the entire class. We have teachers that really engage the students into their curriculum. And we do, like, a fair amount of public speaking in our classes, but also it comes down to, like, it is possible, like, when a teacher's standing in front of, they're like 22 students, let's say, that's like the average class size. If a teacher's standing in front of 22 students, it is possible for a student to, like, kind of hide when everybody else is engaging in the class. I'm the type of student, I'm always kind of engaged because I don't shut my mouth. But also it's not a good thing, but it is possible for a student to hide. But by taking a speech class, it kind of forces, like, my aunt, she came to Milton High when speech was a requirement, and she's a very soft-spoken individual. And she actually says Miss Glynn, who retired a couple years ago, taught her class, and she said that, like, that was the one class that really gets you to come out and actually talk about it and talk, and it just helps so much later in life. So it's built into other classes, but I feel it helps so much to have it there, especially having it sophomore year. Junior and senior year, when you start to take APs and, like, more advanced level classes, it only, like, will help you more.
Mr. Walker?
So a few comments on a motion. I think Evie said it best, these skills will follow us. And I continue to be appalled in my professional life by the number of adults that I meet who are unable to communicate effectively, verbally, or in writing. And if we can take a step which will allow our students to be better prepared in this area, I think we have to do it. And I understand Ms. Kelly's point, and actually I think that the two aren't mutually exclusive. I think that having this as a graduation requirement makes perfect sense. In addition, I think we should supplement that with asking that in other courses these skills are utilized. I think that makes perfect sense, but I'm going to move that we approve the academic year 2014-2015 course of study with the changes as outlined in the document we have and as articulated by Mr. Jett and Ms. Cruiser.
We have a motion made by Mr. Walker and seconded by Mrs. Padera. Any further questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's 4-1 with Mrs. Kelly opposing. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation, for both presentations.
I would now ask Assistant Superintendent John Phelan to give the school committee, thank you, school committee and the viewing public an update on our very important kindergarten and first grade screening and enrollment process.
Good evening to the committee. We have been meeting for probably 8 or 9 weeks regarding the upcoming kindergarten enrollment and grade 1 program choice process that we take on annually in the Milton Public Schools. I would like to alert all of our upcoming kindergarten parents that on the front of the Milton Public School website, which is miltonps.org, is a big headline, how to sign up for full-day kindergarten. There is an online registration process, which we took part in last year, that we successfully enrolled about 80% of our students via online registration prior to our orientation night. And our goal is, again, to increase that participation online this year to make it over 80% of our parents taking advantage of this opportunity. We have parents enroll online right now. This is an active site to prepare for our registration orientation that takes place on January 23rd here at the high school at the Charles Winchester Auditorium in Milton High at 7 p.m. It lasts about an hour if you're looking to get childcare. We encourage every single parent of an upcoming kindergartner to attend this registration. And we encourage every upcoming kindergarten parent to go on Milton Public School website and miltonps.org and register online. We also have online a fax, a frequently asked question document. If I live at a certain address, where do I go to the school? Where can I get the documents to fill out for this process? How do I get to school in the morning? A lot of commonly asked questions that we're trying to flip the classroom and give those answers before folks come in. We will also be emailing the document presentation that we will present on the 23rd to all parents a few nights before to let them read it ahead of time. And we will also continue our practice of emailing some students in action with video clips to parents so they can kind of see what it looks like to be a kindergarten child. I want to be very explicit that this night on the 23rd of January is about how to enroll your child and what that process looks like. The time in which you would visit your school and actually have a kindergarten night at your child's school will be done in June of this coming school year at your child's school. So we like to have all the parents at the high school that night learn about what this process looks like, what the timeline is, but we like to have that what does it mean to be a kindergartner night at the school with the teachers present, with the principal present, so we can meet, see the school, see the teacher, and see the classroom. So that whole timeline will be presented. All the information will be given to parents. Please register. The more folks we have signed up, the easier we can communicate with parents throughout the spring, and the better we can ensure that they have all the information at hand. We also have our grade 1 program selection process happening as well. We will have at each individual elementary school a grade 1 presentation night, which will be on February 12, 2014. And again, if you are a Cunningham kindergarten parent, you will go to the Cunningham grade 1 night. If you are a Glover Cunningham parent, you will go to the Glover grade 1 night, again, at each school. That will be at 7 p.m., and each individual principal will start communicating with their current kindergarten parents about that process and about that night presentation. We will, again, do our PR and flip the classroom, where we'll send out programmatic in subject matter videos and information to parents online in small video clips, and we will provide that full presentation to all parents before they walk into that presentation, so they have all the information up front. And again, our goal is to be very clear with what we are doing and what we have in store for each of our kindergarten students and our grade 1 students, and in the case of grade 1, so they can make an informed decision. We found great success in our grade 1 selection process last year by providing all this information up front, and we had lots of great feedback and good questions the night of our grade 1 nights. So we look forward to this process this year, and we look forward to high participation from our parents so we can have well-informed consumers going into kindergarten and grade 1 for next year.
May I just clarify that a little bit? So January 23rd is a Thursday night for the kindergarten presentation, and February 12th, you said for the first grade, is a Wednesday night?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the 23rd is here at the Milton High School auditorium.
And the grade 1 on February 12th will be at each child's school.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly, you had a question?
Actually, just a comment. We have not, at the Finance Subcommittee, had a chance to review fees. Full-day kindergarten, unfortunately, is a fee for service at this point, and that the whole program needs to be reviewed in terms of expectation for grants. And there is a potential that the present fee, and I can't even tell you what that is, I apologize, may be requested to be increased just to maintain the program. And so I'm hoping that for next meeting, which is unfortunately the day before the full-day kindergarten meeting, we would ask for a vote if there is a need to increase the fee. What we have experienced, or what has been conveyed from the state over the past several years, is the potential for decreasing their support of full-day kindergarten via the grants that they give us. And to the extent that we need to maintain the integrity of the program, we need to revisit that.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Mrs. Padera?
Just a question, kind of clarification. So you said that the incoming kindergarten parents would meet with the principal teachers at their school. Will they know what school their incoming kindergartner is going to by June?
Sure. The registration process that we go through after the night of the 23rd, we have about 80% of our parents signed up, and we schedule them for appointments to bring in their residency information, their health information, and all the necessary documents. During the month of March, we actually process all that information and take any new enrollments through that time. All applications and all enrollment packets that are submitted by April 30th are stamped as submitted on time. At that point in time, having processed all those documents and all that material, on the 30th, we will review with Laurie Dunn, our human resources person. Every single child will give them a school by their school assignment. We'll send them an email that says, you are registered for this school. This is your share of full-day K tuition, if in fact they applied for a free or reduced application. And this is the date of your child's school-based screening and then school-based introduction in night at their school. So that all that information come out at that point in time. Now, we also know that there'll be students that sign up after that. So we will have an rolling admissions for the following folks. But we say out loud that you have to put your application and enrollment paperwork in by the 30th if you want to be ensured that you will have the best opportunity to get your child's homeschool.
So anyone that registers by April 30th will know where their child's going to school by June.
By the first week of May.
First week of May.
We'll send that out by the first week of May.
That's great.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do in the presentation is we actually give a spring timeline with the exact dates and the exact time periods of all those events that I just spoke to. So parents actually get that picture in a January to June snapshot with each event on the calendar, so they know exactly what they'll know, when they'll know it, and what they can expect through the whole spring.
Fantastic.
Mr. Zulus?
Do we have a school committee meeting on February 12th?
I think it's the first, I think it's the 5th.
I'll check after.
I think it's February 5th.
All right.
It's usually the 1st. Yes,
Okay.
it's February 5th. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. As a result of settling the contract, the next item on the agenda is a revised 13-14 school calendar. In the contract, you heard Member Walker describe 4 professional development days. We decided to have the 4 professional development days for high school, for our high school at Milton High School, but because this will be a an adjustment to the calendar for our middle and elementary school parents, teachers and students, we said that we would only schedule 2 professional development days for the remainder of the year for our middle and elementary. And so at the high school last year, the days had always been on Wednesdays. And they're associated with the principals meeting, so the teachers stay after they extend the professional development time into the principals meeting. But yesterday, when we had finance subcommittee, school committee member Mary Kelly had a very good idea that I spoke to the principals about today. If you're an elementary or middle school child and you have art on Monday, and Monday is the day that legal holidays are on, you miss art during the year. Sometimes it's a term where you might miss quite a few sessions of art during one of the semesters during the year. So we're making the following proposal. I wish Mr. Pavlicek, can you, from the packet, put it up on the screen? I should have brought it up on the screen. We'll put it on the web tomorrow. We'll send out to all Milton Public School parents, and we're proposing that for the high school, on February 5th, March 12th, April 3rd, and June 4th, be the 4 half professional development days. So February, it's a Wednesday, March, it's a Wednesday, April, it's a Thursday, in June, it's a Wednesday. I'll explain why afterward. And then the middle and elementary will pick up the March and April, so that will give parents and guardians of elementary and middle school students time. And so we said, in March, it will be on a Wednesday, but in April, will be on a Thursday. And the principals appreciated the idea, Member Kelly, because they said some parents might work certain days, and if it's always on the day, Wednesday when they work, and next meeting, I'm going to bring you next year's schedule, and we're going to choose 4 different days. So they like the idea. They think parents will respond to the idea. Let me tell you that just like every night in January, the school committee is out at a different meeting. When we went to schedule these days, between MCAS and PAC, we were constrained. And so we think that we've done the best job we can scheduling these 4 days. So again, for the viewing public, I'll send an email blast out tomorrow. I wanted to wait till the school committee voted tonight. There will be 4 half days for the high school, 4 half professional development days, 2 half professional development days for the elementary and middle. And you also heard Vice Chair Walker speak about the to Mrs. Kelly's point about speech, we had spring conferences, and then through contract negotiations, we didn't have spring conferences, and now responding to parents who very much want spring conferences, and Member Walker said that Member Padera was an outstanding lobby through negotiations. The conferences are going to be I think I made a mistake. I said that the conferences are going to be on the 6th.
Yeah, that's right.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
The conference is going to be 6th, and this professional development day that month will be the 12th. So we've tried to, the principals, John Phelan, Glenn Pavlicek, and myself, spent a tremendous amount of time looking to maximize teaching and learning, not have in the same week. And so this is the proposal we're making. We've put this new proposal as of last night at your desk. So the only edits are the 4 professional development days, the 2 professional development days that elementary and middle will join, and K-12, the conferences in March. One other little note, because of Charlene Roach has changed the last day of school at the bottom, as long as we're doing an edited conference with the 2 snow days we've had. So I wish I could put that up on the screen for the viewing public. I apologize, but tomorrow we'll put that calendar out in the email blast to every Milton Public School parent and guardian.
Ms. Gormley, I apologize because I've looked at this before and this just came to me as you were presenting it. I wonder if there are families out there that use high school students as babysitters on those early release days, and if there's a way that those days
I
could
think
be on the same
transportation
day.
would be an issue, is my first,
Say that again, I'm sorry.
my first impulse would be, you have an issue, so we can look at it. My first impulse is buses.
We wouldn't be able to do it because of buses?
Well, no, I'm not saying it, I hadn't thought of it myself, but we use the same, it would be a cost. It would be an added cost. Mr. Pavlicek? It would be an added cost.
Well,
Well,
we'd have
there's-
to redo the bus route.
There's an additional problem. The agreement says that they'll be on the same day throughout the district, so.
And we have so many teachers, it is, I understand you coming up with that idea, and it's excellent, but we have a lot of teachers that service all 6 schools. You know, 4 schools, 2 schools, they go across all of the schools.
So, Mr. Walker, are you saying that they are supposed to be on the same day?
That's what the agreement says.
So you,
Not the same day of the week.
not the same day of the week, but
same
for
day
the
for all.
level, for
District-wide.
high school,
So we do need to
middle,
make that
and
happen.
elementary, they have to be on the same day.
And
So we can't vote this tonight, then?
They are on the same day, K-12.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And so to that point, we attach the principals' meetings, and that's why the high school did it on Wednesdays. But we're able to, with enough notice, change what day those principals' meetings will be. And this is giving staff enough notice that we can change the existing schedule. So so if you vote this tonight, we'll commit to fully publicize this through the principals and myself to every parent and guardian. And next week, 2 weeks from now, I'll bring you the 14-15 calendar.
Mrs. Kelly?
So this will be the first time that we're having early release in a very long time, if I remember correctly, for elementary and middle school. So community schools, will they have offerings for students that would?
Absolutely.
And what does that do to buses, right? Because there's that whole issue, I think.
Well, my instinct is, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, it would be like staying after school, you would have to be picked up eventually. But they're very flexible in that they could make those extended days till 5.
Right, and so I guess I'm hoping that we'll work with
I'll
community
commit to
schools, especially around elementary, but middle school, for me, are probably the more problematic population as to what do you do when you're not supervised and mom and dad are at work or whatever. So I don't know whether community schools could, venture into expanding into the middle school for a time to offer something, but I think it's something that we should brainstorm about.
And I'll report out to that when I do that calendar at the next meeting.
Thank you.
It's a good point.
Mrs. Padera?
I just noticed one thing. In the April, it says April 2nd, but the 3rd is highlighted.
Oh, right.
And it should be the 3rd.
It should be the 3rd, so that should just say the 3rd.
Yes, because it's Wednesday in March and the 3rd, so for working parents and guardians for that's the K-12. That's when your elementary and middle join in, March and April. There'll be 2 different days. Good point.
And then I think that's why you thought you made the mistake, which you didn't, but maybe, since all the rest are the early to the late under March, it says the 12th and then the 6th, so we probably just since we're editing it anyways. And then I was just going to ask the question, so that's good that they're on the same day if we're using high school babysitters, so that's what you wanted, okay,
Right.
so they are on the same day. That's great, thank you.
Move approval of the revised fiscal 13-14 school year calendar as submitted by the superintendent and edited by Ms. Padera.
We have a motion?
Second.
A second by Ms. Padera. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
Very much. It's a wonderful news story, as you heard from the high school tonight.
Yeah.
I've added on your agenda, and we're fully publicizing that we're going to be doing a budget presentation tonight, that tomorrow afternoon, Assistant Superintendents Phelan, Pavlicek, and myself will be presenting to all staff, and then working with the Finance Subcommittee and the School Committee, we've set up meetings at all of our schools, joining the Collycott and Cunningham, and tomorrow night joining the high school and PS Middle School for budget and the cut reduction list that we're going to present later in today's meeting to parents and guardians. So we have a busy month of January planned for the school committee, going out to each of the PTOs. And, oh, they left.
I was just going to say, you lost your happening.
Yeah, you lost your, you have to do it
Well, you know
yourself.
what, we had an email blast today, and happenings will be in the email blast, so we'll tie it into the next meeting.
Ms. Gomez, I'd like to say it's nice to have your voice back. Thank you. We'll move on to the Finance Subcommittee report. Mrs. Kelly?
Yes. So the first item, and I don't know whether the administration wants to take the first item first, or do we want to go to the budget first? If it's the first item, then I will hand it off to whoever would like to handle that, because I'm not well-versed in it. Or we can go to the budget presentation. So what's your
Whichever your
pleasure?
pleasure is, Mr. Walker.
Let's do the restorations.
Would you do it?
I could.
Is that all right?
So the superintendent is recommending two position restorations for the half year. A little bit about how that occurred. The two positions are a librarian aide and a custodian. Both positions were approved for reduction in January of 2013 by the school committee. The custodian reduction was implemented July 1. The librarian aide was deferred by the administration, but subsequently admitted very late last year. I think when we discussed the custodian reduction, Ms. Sheridan expressed some reservations about the reduction, given the square footage that each custodian was responsible for. That situation has been exacerbated by the unanticipated long-term absences of 4 custodians. I haven't checked with Mr. Pavlicek recently, but as recently as 2 weeks ago, there were 4 custodians who were out on long-term absence. The librarian aide, we got some feedback it's almost as soon as we made the reduction from PTOs that there was an impact with regard to library and students being able to return books on a regular basis. So we asked Mr. Pavlicek in one of the Finance Subcommittee meetings to look at whether we could identify the funds for this year to restore those 2 positions. He has been able to find the funds to do that, so we're recommending the restoration of these 2 positions. Ms. Kelly pointed out, I think correctly, that at least with regard to the custodian, we would have to either amend the budget request for fiscal 15 or decide that we're somehow going to find those funds at some later date. But we're recommending that we approve the restoration of those 2 positions for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Mrs. Kelly, thank you. Thank
What's,
you, Mr. Walker.
what's the cost?
Mr. Pavlicek?
The cost of the librarian aide for the remainder of the year is approximately $13,000. The cost of the custodian for the remainder of the year will be approximately $24,000.
And the funding source?
The librarian aide was actually still, when I rolled the budget up for this year, I was working with actual personnel numbers, so when I created the budget for this year, that person was still on the books, and so I actually rolled it forward. So in a sense, the librarian was built into this year's budget when I built it over the summer, because I was working with a new system then, and I was just trying to build it up based on actuals. The custodian, we have had 2 custodians on long-term unpaid leave. So we have actually a little surplus in our custodial budget. So I'll be able to fund the second half of the custodian with existing funds, owing to the fact that we have people on unpaid leave.
Mrs. Kelly?
I apologize for my ignorance on this, but didn't we say they're out on short-term disability? And isn't there a cost to us?
No, we have had 3 out on FMLA unpaid leave and 1 out on just a straight unpaid leave.
Okay.
So we need to take a vote. I'm sorry, Mr. Zulus?
Just briefly for additional color on the library aid, the effect of that, as I understand it, is that kindergarten, elementary students will be able to go to the library every week as opposed to twice a month.
Thank you for that clarification. Mrs. Kelly?
And just, last year, they were going every other week or not? Because I thought at some point they were going every other week. Was that all of last year? No, they never really?
No.
I know they started this
When I
year.
stopped,
They-
when I eliminated the library aid,
Yeah.
they were going every other week. And if I might, and so when we get into these cuts and the impact of all of these reductions, first, the tax dollar and the foundation and parents and PTOs have made an investment in the collection. And so we looked at a lot of creative ways to try to bring the students on the off week when they didn't have a librarian, but you have to have somebody there to protect the collection. And then when listening to parents, it was an issue of access. And so there are students within our town who can't and don't access the Milton Public Library, and their source of library books are our school libraries. So we evaluate these cuts. We think that when we get to the next part, that we have identified cuts that are going to minimally impact students, and to have somebody, an aide trained on the off weeks, when you think 2,000 students are bringing books back, getting books, again, protecting the collection in a matter of, to have all students accessing the heart of the school, again, that wasn't a cut that I should have recommended. So the restoration of that aid for the rest of the year is going to positively impact the 4 elementary schools and the 2,000 children.
Mrs. Kelly?
I have no doubt that it will positively impact. My concerns are, is it something that we will need in the FY15 budget? So the library aid, does that need to be part of our request, which, at least to my knowledge, is not part of the present request, or it is part of the present request?
It is.
It is part of the present request, because I would roll the existing staff forward, and she was in the existing staff at the point at which I drew up the fiscal 15 budget as well.
And what would
And I was, if I might, Mrs. Kelly, when we make these presentations, and we're in meeting every Tuesday morning with you and Mr. Walker and Mr. Zulus, we look at every single cut, and we feel like when we present to the warrant committee and to the public, I say today to the leadership team, we're only as good as our name. So we tried to work with, we tried, first of all, to start the year, we hired a digital, a technology digital specialist who was going to complement the librarian, if you might remember. That wasn't working within the 4 schools, tailoring, getting ready for Park, her lessons, and working across the district, trying to integrate all of these lessons. And so we started to work with the librarian aid, but then I eliminated the librarian aid because I had committed to eliminating the library aid, and that's when all of the issues came up, that this wasn't a good choice or recommendation on my part.
So we'll entertain a motion to,
Move that we restore the librarian aide and a custodian position for the remainder of fiscal 14.
Second.
moved by Mr. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Padera. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's 4 to 1 with Mrs. Kelly abstaining.
4 to 1 night, apparently.
And the next thing, Finance Subcommittee?
Yes, it was. Point taken.
The fiscal year 15 budget presentation, reduction. Who's going to do that?
You want to frame that, and then we'll set it up?
Sure. So, we've been working for many weeks, months, on the FY15 budget. We have, at this table, voted our request and sent it on to the warrant committee. Part of the process that happens after we put in our request is we basically have to tell them what the impact to the school system will be if we don't get all of our requests. So what we have here, the administration, along with the leadership team, has been working very hard trying to figure out what do you cut, because that basically is what it comes down to. So I don't know whether we have sort of where we are, and that might be the place to start in terms of how we get to the number that we have to cut back.
And so I met with the leadership team today, and our principals actually have met with individual teachers, because many of our teachers live in the town of Milton and might be watching tonight. And we want them to know if they're on this cut reduction list from the administrators. So first, I want to explain to the viewing public, we meet with the Finance Subcommittee, members Zulus, Walker, and Kelly, every Tuesday morning, and we do, they've reacted to these cuts and reductions, and this is probably really difficult, some of the most difficult work that we do. You heard the discussion about the library aid, because as I explained to the principals in Unit B, our leadership team today, 25 of them, that these cuts are real. And so we'll go out to the PTOs. Our experience has been the school committee listens to the parents, and then we take this list, and before we go in front of the warrant committee at the end of January, I've watched the school committee make some changes. I will tell you, in the past 5 meetings, there have been several changes as of yesterday on this. This is our proposal for a cut reduction list if the Milton Public School FY15 budget isn't fully funded. So we'll begin, and if Assistant Superintendent Pavlicek will set it up with the financials, and then John Phelan and I will follow up.
All right. You'll recall, this slide shows the fiscal 14 budget, which was approved as $37,566,000. It last spring was approved in 2 articles at town meeting, one $440,000 in one-time funds to identify some expenditures we had which were non-recurring, and $37,126,000 from the general fund, basically the recurring funds. Now, we treat this as one budget of $37.5 million, but it did come from 2 different funding sources. When we put together our request for fiscal 15, our request was $39,674,000. And as we did last year, we identified $500,000 of that as being potentially raisable from one-time funds that the town has again this year. And so our request is for the $39.6 million, but for purposes of presentations of the warrant committee, we identified $500,000 as one-time funds and suggested that $39.1 million could come from the tax levy. It's just a difference of $2.1 million overall, $60,000 additional money from one-time funds over last year's allocation of one-time funds, and $2.05 million from the general fund for the tax levy. Yeah, go ahead. When we presented that to the warrant committee, I had some discussions with the chair and others about what level of a cut list they wanted to see. I mean, in general, the warrant committee often asks departmental budgets, give us a level service budget and give us a level dollar budget. A level dollar budget from this would force us to create a cut list of $2.1 million, which would be a draconian cut list. And given the financial situation of the town, one that wasn't likely to occur. We knew there was going to be money in the town this year. Proposition 2.5 does allow a certain amount of money. And there are some revenue estimates that need to be made about how much money that is likely to be basically in the kitty for distribution at town meeting this spring. We knew there was $2 million in free cash, so the one-time funds are slightly above $2 million. And a quick computation from Proposition 2.5 tells you you have somewhere at least on the order of $1.8, $1.9 million coming out of the tax revenue, and then you have to worry about how you judge other revenues to come in yet, and that's something that's going to be going on for the next couple of months. So the correspondence I had suggested that what we should do, since we asked for the $500,000 in one-time funds and the rest in revenues, in tax revenues, was to suggest that for our cut list initially, we look at getting the $500,000 in one-time funds and looking at our level of funding for last year plus $1.3 million, or basically $38.4 million out of the tax levy and $500,000 from one-time funds. Now, this is, my footnote on that is, this is not guaranteed. I mean, this is just was a suggestion from the warrant committee that they've made no votes, they've allocated no money, but it was a place that we needed to start. So we're not, creating a scenario that isn't likely to occur, but at the same time, we give a scenario that gives them a reasonable view of what a fairly likely scenario would look like, so they have something to work with. So, again, the caveat here is if, this could be higher, it could be lower, but this is the number we're looking at as, to give us this snapshot. So, if you look at our budget request versus this suggestion of level general fund plus $1.3 million, what you see is there's a differential between basically our request and this scenario for a budget of $747,000. So 747 we took on to be the so-called cut list. What would we have to remove from our request to drop it by $747,000, and what would that look like? So that's how we got to the 747 number, and the remaining couple slides here are our best attempt as to how we would settle that number.
Thank you, Glenn. So the Finance Subcommittee has worked with us, and we have framed the cuts and reductions in 3 different sections. The first section will be non-position reductions. And so in text materials and supplies, again, we're going to attach this cut and reduction list to our budget presentation that we presented at the last meeting. We would take a $40,000 reduction, reduce the increase in funds that we had asked for in the budget. Primarily, this would be copier and furniture replacements will be delayed. So that's a $40,000 reduction to our proposed budget. Again, we have revolving funds. We have a rental fee. We have a revolving fund for our rental fees. And I've often explained to parents and I explained to staff that those rental fees pay the custodians, but we also use those rental fees for maintenance on our buildings. When I see our auditorium used, anybody at this table will tell you, I often think the wear and tear on our auditoriums, but we use those rental fees for the maintenance of our facilities. And so we're going to increase the fees so that we can add an additional $10,000, so that will increase the charges to rentals. Summer enrichment, adult ed chargeback. Again, our summer enrichment and adult ed program, if you look at the revolving accounts, are becoming more solvent. They've been running really even, and we've been able to pay all of our costs, pay the administrators, and Assistant Superintendent Pavlicek looked at those, and we're going to do a one-time chargeback because this will deplete, Mr. Pavlicek?
Not completely.
Almost. Deplete those two revolving accounts for $42,000. Community schools chargeback, we already charged back against the community schools account. We charged them for heat, lights, custodians, and we're going to increase that charge back to $20,000, an additional $20,000. You heard tonight about the 4 half-days next year. Again, when I spoke to the administrators today, I said, I think this proves to you that we look at every single line of the budget when we're making these proposed cuts and reductions with the Finance Subcommittee and the School Committee. The aides that work in our system will not have to work 4 half-days, and Assistants Superintendent Phelan and Pavlicek figured that out, that with the aides not required to attend those 4 half-days, that will be a savings of $20,000. Next, we have, through the school building project and a commitment by this school committee and this community to children with individual special education, individual plans, we've created special ed programs so that students who live in Milton can go to our schools. They might not be able to go to their neighborhood school, but within the district, we have created programs. We have worked hard with the PAC. We have worked hard with the school committee to create programs that are really exemplary. And you've worked with us, the school committee, on our NEC program for preschool, kindergarten, and first graders at the Collycott School, at the Collycott Cunningham School. And we had a child who lived in the district, moved out of district, and the new district asked if they could tuition in that child. And so we're going to, again, look for next year that same tuition. So that's an $88,000 tuition. And we're going to look in the coming years, check the enrollment of those programs. Again, working, I sent to the school committee an email today. We have put word out to area special ed directors. Mr. Zulus was in the office today when we had the SPED administrator with us, and we're going to look to that in future years. But for next year, that's $88,000. Assistant Superintendent Pavlicek explained that next year, our contract with our school buses, our yellow school buses, is up, and he put a contingency in for our special ed buses that we don't have to go out to bid for, but our big yellow buses, we have to. And looking at that, we're saying, and again, this is one of those reductions we hope we can make, a $30,000 savings in anticipated contract costs with Mr. Pavlicek beginning to look at what those costs are going to be. That would total $250,000 if we were not fully funded. And you can hear the hesitation about the transportation and some of the other, the summer enrichment and the adult ed, that's a one-time chargeback. That would total $250,000 in one-time costs. The Finance Subcommittee asked us to separate these positions reductions. Again, the impact on the school district, the impact on students, the impact on teaching and learning. And these are really based on enrollment, and so we'll read you the notes at the bottom. We have to think of these in terms of when enrollment rises the next year. These would be positions that we would have to put back. The first is the potential loss of one co-taught teacher. Our co-taught program began with one co-taught classroom servicing the whole district, housed at the Glover and Tucker School, Glover or Tucker, and then the population grew that we were carrying two co-taught at every grade level. For the last 2 years, responding to the IEPs, we've only had one kindergarten and one first grade co-taught for the district. And so with the movement in and out, we could have a potential reduction of one co-taught teacher, and that would be a $55,000 reduction. Again, this is one that we met with the SPED director today, and this is, we're putting it up on the list, but we have to watch through the spring the IEPs and the children who move into the district. But Member Kelly had us work with the SPED director, checking our preschool population. But this could be a cut that we have, a recommended reduction that we have to watch. At the middle school grade 8 science, next year there's going to be a lower enrollment at grade 8. And so Dr. Spalding has recommended a 0.2 reduction in science at the cost of $11,000, so that a science teacher is retiring. The impact of this would be we would have to post a 0.8 position in the area of science. That's not going to be an easy position to fill. Science, several disciplines are very difficult to fill. Science positions are difficult to fill. People do not, again, they'll always want full-time employment, but this is a reduction when we're looking at every single position in the district, and that's going to be on enrollment. And then the next year, coming up from the 6th grade, we would have to replace that 0.2 teacher. Middle school grade 6 geography, based on the enrollment of children in the French immersion and students in the English program, Dr. Spalding believes that she can make a 0.2 reduction in the English geography positions. So that means one of the 2 geography teachers at the 6th grade. Again, we would have to look at the RIF lists and repost. Somebody would be laid off and a position would be reposted at 0.8. That's a 0.2 reduction, a loss of 1 section due to enrollment shift. And then the last, again, we're looking at all of our deliveries, and we believe in elementary speech we can make a 0.2 reduction at the cost of $11,000 by redeploying our speech therapists, but every child, every student with an IEP would continue to receive the services in their IEP. It would be a redeployment of our speech therapists across the district. That would total $88,000, FTE at 1.6, $88,000.
The next round of reductions are what we would consider to have high impact if they were to have to be put in place for next school year. The reductions that we consider to be of high impact that we would not like to see happen, but to reach the goal of the $750,000 in reductions, we would start at the elementary level with the grade 5 chorus program. That is a 0.2 FTE or an $11,000 reduction to the budget. Students right now in grade 5 have music class and an additional chorus class, and what we will do is eliminate the chorus class that they take and work the chorus piece of the curriculum into their into their music class curriculum. We have enjoyed the music in the chorus. In the addition of chorus to grade 5, it brings out our parents. It's a performing based class where we can have concerts at each of our elementary schools, and it has been very successful over the past few years, and that will be sorely missed. Elementary special education, 0.3. We have a teacher who is retiring at the elementary level, and as we look over the caseload, we believe we can replace that specialist at a 0.7 FTE and not a full 1.0 FTE. So we can reduce that by 0.3. That's a reduction of $18,000. We believe it may result in some small group increase enrollment in those small group sessions, in those pull-out classes, but we believe it's something that we can achieve and still be aligned with every IEP that would be serviced by this individual in that school. Going to the middle school, we have a 1.0 history reduction. This is a loss of the team structure, and this loss would require teachers in grades 7 and 8 to share students and cross-team. This is very much a structural change to our middle school team model that we believe would be a difficult reduction to make, as the team model is the bread and butter of the middle school organization in success. Middle school electives, we're recommending a 0.4 reduction of $23,000. This would be the loss of one section of the iSTEM elective class that we currently offer in one section of the grade 8 math investigations. The iSTEM is a math elective that we have in our STEM arena that we have had for 2 years. That is a math STEM course for students who would like enrichment in math. And the math investigations is one class that supports students who are in need of some remediation and support in their grade level math, and that would be at the 8th grade level. Special education at the middle school, a .4 reduction of $23,000. This special educator that we'd reduced by a .4 status currently provides walk-in services for students who are not Milton Public Schools students, but the Milton Public Schools, as every public school is, required to provide special education services, and we would try to reorganize and redeploy the resources in the school special education teachers that will remain to provide that service to these groups of folks that come into our schools for that service. It may well increase the small group pullouts that we have by the existing staff at the Pierce Middle School. Point 2, art, an $11,000 reduction. This would mean the reduction of one section of art, resulting in higher class size in the art classes and in all elective classes at the Pierce Middle School next year. At the high school, Principal Jett has proposed the reduction of 1.5 adjustment counselor. That is a part-time position. That person is a part-time person right now at the high school, and that job would be eliminated, which would mean that we would really stick to providing adjustment counseling first and foremost for those students on IEPs that call for that service, and then service other students on top of that with the remaining 1.5 adjustment counselors that would stay at the high school. So we currently have 2.0 FTEs. That would leave the high school with a 1.5 set of adjustment counselors to support students at the high school. High school consumer studies, .6, $33,000. We would eliminate the foods elective at the high school. That is a course that Mr. Jett believes we could do without if need be. This is a difficult reduction as there are many students who enjoy this elective and they feel it's well attended. And so the student selection of it would be missed in this year's selection for the 14-15 school year. In addition to the electives that won't be named, and as Mr. Jett and Mrs. Cruiser outlined tonight, they do their course of studies and they put out the menu of electives, and those electives are not just wellness or phys ed or art or music, but they're also electives within the area of English and social studies, things like psychology, and other co-curricular activities, electives. We will reduce that by 2.5 FTEs, and that will be done by what courses do not run by what courses are not enrolled or chosen by students. The reduction will cause definite rise of class size in all electives across the board, because when you take all those students out of those elective classes, they have to go somewhere, as we offer courses in all 7 periods of the high school day, that naturally the electives that remain intact and do run in the 14-15 school year will have more students in them. Lastly, we will reduce a district-wide administrative support position. That will be a $1.0 $58,000 reduction, and that will mean the reorganization of all of our support staff across the district. That total of this section of the higher impact reductions by position would result in an additional $409,000 reduction to the budget.
John, just before you leave, just to clarify, the positions on this slide are not intended to be in any kind of order of priority.
That is correct. These are not prioritized. They're done by level.
Should we address questions page by page as we go along? Is that helpful, or should we wait till the end of the, we're almost
There's
done?
only one more page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this, Mr. Pavlicek?
This is just a summary of the previous pages, to put it on one slide. $747,000 decrease from our request is the elimination of 8.7 FTEs, the loss of chorus, the loss of elective options at the high school. It's just reiterating what we've just been through. Increased class sizes and electives at the middle and high school, some increased class sizes, some sped pullouts, and a reorganization of administrative support. So that's the sort of 6-bullet, 1-slide summary of the previous 3.
And the team structure.
And the team structure at the middle school in 8th grade with the history, the loss of history.
We'll
That
add
should
that
probably be
before
on
we
there as-
post it.
Yeah, we'll add that on there. So,
Thank you. So do we have questions or comments, Mrs. Padera?
I'm just wondering how the eliminating the electives will work. I mean, because you're basically talking about eliminating 2.5 full-time educators. What, if they don't fall in line with the same person? Do you know what I mean? If you have one class, it's AP Physics, and then you have another class, it's art, that doesn't add up to the same teacher I'm expecting. So how are you going to, will you look at that in terms of the person with the most positions, or I don't know how that's done?
The reductions in that manner will be done by FTE, so similar to the middle school reduction where someone might go from a 1.0 job to a 0.8 position, that could be a reduction in someone's salary by 20% of their salary. They would no longer be a full-time employee, they would be a 0.8 employee. So depending on what courses do not run at the high school, we would look at that overall selection and begin to speak to the departments and look at what employees would be impacted by that may go from full-time to part-time, or if it's a heavy in any one department, it could be someone full-time to being reduced completely. So it will be done in increments of class and increments of FTE by a 0.2 status for 0.2 status.
So that would also somewhat impact, you could really lose some good people that way.
Correct.
Because if people really can't afford to take a 0.6 or a 0.8 position, they're a person that would look for another job.
That's correct.
So it's going to impact options for Milton High School students. It's going to impact the staff once it's determined which electives are going to be reduced.
I have a couple of questions. On the previous page to this, it says under potential loss of one co-taught teacher, the amount of that FTE is $55,000. And then on the next page that we just looked at, the middle school history teacher FTE for one teacher was $58,000. Are those different? I thought we were using one bucket number, or is that the difference between elementary and middle school?
Good question.
in this one, it is a slight difference in the seniority of people involved.
Okay. And then back on the other page, when you talked about the reduction of the chorus, and I understand that it's a separate class, but when we eliminate those at the elementary school, I know that the P&D, the planning and development periods for teachers, are mandated by the contract, and sometimes it's really hard to fill those. Will that have an impact on teacher planning time, or?
No.
No.
Okay, so that's above and beyond that. And then, I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions here. The middle school elective, the fourth one down, it says that one section of the grade 8 math investigations will be cut. And I know that that's a course that is maybe remedial or supportive for students who are struggling academically, and where that's one of our goals, I'm just questioning how we're able to maybe cut that class.
If you remember when Principal Spalding came, she actually did some data analysis on the math investigations course and found that it was successful in 6th grade, very successful in 6th grade, successful in 7th grade, but it lost its statistical success in 8th grade, whether it be because of the age of the students or it's the third year in a row they've been in it. But she did do that analysis, and she felt that if it was going to be reduced, it should be reduced at the 8th grade because it wasn't yielding the student achievement outcomes that we had thought in the end.
So I think
If
that's.
this cut wasn't made, if I might, if this cut wasn't made or having to recommend it, Dr. Spalding would take that .2 position, look at those 8th graders, And just the way she has, since she's been principal of that school, creating the I-STEM, she would creatively take that .2 position and recreate, rather than math investigations, some kind of support for those students. So those students at grade 8, by eliminating that math investigations, you are right, they're not going to get the class.
So I think that that's a really powerful data point, and it might be great to find a place to put that piece of information in there, because, you know, maybe on the,
Create a note like it.
right, some kind of a note, it's not really a summary point, but it's a note that would just kind of identify that although this is an important class at the lower grades, the impact isn't as great at grade 8, and so therefore it can afford to be cut.
Well,
That's what I'm thinking.
the impact of maybe investigations, but taking that .2, I will guarantee you, they would have worked to create, just like they have Life Lagares and Dr. Spalding, looking at each of the supports at that school, recreating some of the classes, using existing personnel to really maximize the instruction.
So I just want to add, so even though there was an obvious logic to the reduction, because we were asking all of our principals to be thoughtful and reflective as to why they would choose what they would choose, we still feel that .2 could be utilized. So I don't want to make people think that it was that easy to lose. It's still an important, allocation of resources that we would like to gain back, if possible.
Right. I wasn't trying to say that it was an important position. I clearly hear what you say. It just kind of seemed like it flagged in the face of closing the achievement gap. And
Those are the discussions that we've been having with
I'm
the
sure,
subcommittee.
I'm sure. But I think it's helpful for the public to hear it here as well, so. And then the final one I had was the high school adjustment counselor. So could you speak to that again? Because I think I was a little confused. So it's going from a 2.1 to a 1.5, a half-time, full-time equivalent, but it's not just 2 positions?
Correct. The adjustment counseling FTE allocation currently is 2.0. That is involving of 1 full-time person and 2 part-time people.
Oh, okay,
So this would mean that 1 of the part-time people would be reduced,
okay. Would be eliminated.
would be eliminated completely.
And right now, students at Milton High School who aren't on IEPs can access those adjustment counselors. That would, with 1.5, working with the leadership team, Principal Jett said that those students would have to go to their guidance counselors who aren't on IEPs.
But we know that the guidance department has been cut back as well in recent years, and so I just, I think it's important to say that, you know, although we're identifying these as cuts, that these, again, are not easy cuts, and to say that, you know, a child in need needs to go to speak to a guidance counselor as opposed to an adjustment counselor is a
And if
challenge.
Member Bagley Jones was here, she would detail that an adjustment counselor has a very different certification than a guidance counselor.
Totally different skill set.
And she would educate us. Oh, you're a guidance counselor, excuse me.
No, yes, I'm a guidance, but not an adjustment. No, I was just going to add that, you know, in working in Health and Wellness Committee with Superintendent Gormley knows, the adjustment counselors do a lot of work in health and wellness as well. It's not just seeing students, but really programming things for the school that keep our kids healthy, involving many, many things. And, you know, since they work as a team and work with each other, that would have a huge impact, I believe.
And then just finally, the last one, I'm not going to ask you to itemize it, but the district-wide administrative support, again, I feel like our administration is lean, and there are no, you know, middle school, assistant principals at the elementary schools as it is, and we have large populations at those schools, and to say that we're going to cut at one time, you know, an equivalent of 1.0, I understand the need to do it, but I just need to say it out loud that it's going to be difficult, I'm sure, so.
I can reinforce your point. I think that this is the result of an incredibly difficult process, and with the possible exception for 1 or 2 things on the non-position reductions list, none of these are cuts that we would like to make, we want to make, or so you start at the top, and any one of these, when you talk about it, you say, this is not a cut we should make. And that's, I think, true throughout the list. That being said, there were some much less palatable ideas and recommendations that were discussed, and so this is the result of an incredibly difficult process.
I'd also like to say that the previous page that was the, not the, I'm sorry, there was one back from that, the non-position reductions. Again, you're to be complimented for your creativity and resourcefulness, and it seems like no stone's been left unturned in terms of looking at this, and I know how painful these discussions have been on so many different levels for you all to have, but this is just a creative, look at opportunities, and I compliment you for that. Any other comments or questions, Mrs. Padero?
Yeah, just a couple more. I'd just like to reinstate the chorus program. What is the difference in terms of now? I mean, I have a 5th grader, and I know she really enjoys chorus, but I've never really asked her, what's the difference between your music class and your chorus class?
Well, we know, but we have cut and re-educated that students in the Milton Public Schools at grades 4 and 5 did have a music class historically, and in addition, they had a chorus class. And there were very healthy, John Phelan will tell you, the public, parents and guardians, there would be evening, afternoon, during the day concerts as a result of these chorus classes. And again, they were grades 4 and 5. I was explaining to Finance Subcommittee the other day, when we eliminated chorus, we saw a pattern at the middle school. The music is strings, bands, chorus, and general music. The chorus numbers went down, right, Mr. Phelan? Because, as I said, if you don't stack chorus when you're in the 4th and 5th grade, you're not really going to be a middle school boy or that raises your hand and wants to go into chorus. But when you stack chorus in the 4th and 5th grade, and you're part of a chorus and you have that experience, it develops those skills and those talents. And our music director, we don't have any music directors at this table, and we've been educated by Dr. Noreen Diamond Burdett. She's an advocate that everyone have general music. And then, when we put the chorus back, she really wanted more general music at a particular grade level. And we said that this was an unbelievable experience for 5th graders, an enriching experience, tapping a gift that you might not know you have, even in general music. You might not know you have that gift to sing until you get into a chorus. And so, working with the Finance Subcommittee, we would, if we put this experience, chorus experience, into the 5th grade music class, it's going to cut out some of the general music curriculum. And so those are the kind of discussions we've been having. Neither will be the same. If you're a music advocate, it won't be the same music class. If you're a chorus advocate, it's not going to be the same chorus.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, in hearing about what chorus is doing, I mean, I think that there was even a competition where the 5th graders got to sign up and perform in front of their friends. And I think at 5th grade, performing in front of your friends is even much different than 7th grade performing in front of your friends. If you haven't done it before, you need a lot more confidence in 7th grade probably than you do in 5th grade. So I think it is something important, even though we're going to be still offering it as part of the music class, it is something that kids look forward to as 5th
And I
graders.
should also tell you, during chorus, 2 classes are joined together.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then the other thing I was just going to add to is I had the same thought as Chairman Sheridan did about the math investigations. If we were going to be working on proficiency gaps and cutting out the courses that are supposed to be working on those, that would be a problem. Although, hearing Mr. Fallon's description, I understand that maybe that would be the least offensive of the 3, but it's still somewhat, I understand we could use that for other purposes, and that's too bad. And the same with the iSTEM elective, if we're going to be moving towards some of these advancement initiatives, we might have to look back at what we're cutting and see if that trade-off is worth it. Because I think if we indeed need to make some of these cuts, I'm not sure if the trade-off for me would be worth it in terms of losing valuable people at the high school because we cut their positions to 0.8 and they just can't afford to work for that. And cutting out programs, which would be, the elementary program, that would be eliminated. The team system at the middle school, for those who don't know much about it, is extremely important in having the teachers work together and getting to know kids. So I would be much against that as well. So those are some disappointing cuts.
No cuts are good. Okay, Mrs. Kelly?
So
Sorry.
just on the presentation and to all of the comments that were just made, if we can go back to the previous slide. I think these are position reductions with high impact. And I think the next page is position reductions with very high impact. I don't think nobody at this table wants any of these reductions. And I think we need to describe it that way.
Good. I like that. Any further discussion? So we have a vote for this. I'll entertain a motion to accept these.
Well, I guess, yes. I think if we're to put this into the presentation and to have it presented tomorrow to various audiences, then yes, I think it needs to be voted.
But could I also say, oh, sorry, Mr. Zoll.
No, I was scratching my head.
I would also like to say that we will vote it tonight, but this is still a work in progress. I mean, we are going out to the different schools, and we will listen to what parents have to say to us. We need to take a vote for the purpose of moving this forward, but this is the beginning of this discussion or continuation of this discussion, that when we go to the different PTO meetings throughout the month of January, we really hope that parents will come out and get educated and inform us and share their impact, but know that we understand the impact. But we will listen to thoughts and comments that are shared with us. So.
And this will be on the web tomorrow.
So I'm not sure what we're voting for then. We're voting to, because, we did get this rather late, so if we make cuts in this, I'm not sure I would be able to vote in positive that these are the cuts I would vote for. Do you know what I'm saying? So what is our vote? If we're are we voting to put it into a presentation that these are possible cuts that might need to be made? Or are we voting that this is our recommendation that these cuts would be needed to make?
Maybe the Finance Committee should, or Mr. Pavlicek address that.
This is a vote with the accompanying reservation that I've already expressed. This is a vote as to how, at this time, we would propose to close the $747,000 gap. That doesn't mean we can't, at some point, change our minds about that. In fact, we have a few months to change our minds about that. But right now, in fairness to the PTOs, the staff of the district, and the warrant committee, we have to give them some idea of what the impact of the funding level that Mr. Pavlicek has outlined is. And the only way to do that is to say that the school committee has expressed its approval that we can start this discussion. It's to start the discussion. So I don't think you need to feel that this is your final opportunity, but for right now, this is our description of how we would close that gap. And that's been the result of a discussion that's gone on for the last 3 weeks in the Finance Subcommittee.
The other point is that we have
Go ahead.
a full a budget hearing where the public is able to come and speak to us as well. So this isn't a done deal by taking this vote. I think it's, again,
It's a starting point. In years past, we have actually gone out to the different schools and heard a lot of pushback,
Right.
and have actually changed some of the cuts that we've at one point established, and then it's an
But why is the requirement that we vote before we talk to the PTOs? I'm just curious.
I mean, one thing you're doing is you're voting to present this to the warrant committee and in response to their request for a description of what a set of cuts might look like at that funding level. I mean, and the warrant committee has asked a question, we're proposing an answer to that question. And at this point in time, this is our answer. In a month from now, our answer may look a little different in response to PTOs, in response to different revenue projections from the warrant committee. I mean, this is, numbers are going to move around between now and town meeting. But in one sense, we've been asked a question. We have a proposed answer for it from the Finance Subcommittee and the administration, and the simplest way of viewing it is you're recommending that this be the answer that's given to the warrant committee and distributed at PTO meetings for comment.
In addition to that, you talked, Glenn, about town meeting, but we also have a January 27th meeting with the warrant committee, with just the school committee, and then we have the full-day budget meeting. I think it's February 6th, is that the date?
8th, I think.
8th, sorry.
Saturday is.
So, I mean, there are, and as you said, Glenn, there will be changes in numbers that come forward, so.
I appreciate Member Padera's reluctance to vote for these, but to Mrs. Kelly's point, I believe for the last 2 years, after the school committee went out to the PTOs, that I know for the last 2 years, there have been changes in the recommended lists after hearing from parents.
And I agree, those be pushed back. My biggest concern is that if we come down to having to make these types of cuts, I'm not sure if I would recommend everything on the advancement budget in trade-off to some of these things. So I don't know if I could, if that's what a vote means, is recommending this is how we close the gap, I'm not sure that I would vote for that. And I don't know if we could vote for it after meeting with PTOs and before the warrant committee. But that's kind of where I am from right now, looking at this list, for when we got it. And I appreciate all the administration did to close that gap, because I know that they worked very, very hard with leadership teams. But I'm just not sure if I'm at that point yet.
So in all fairness, this is the first presentation that Mrs. Padera and I have had to look at this and really try and, I mean, I read it this afternoon, but to hear the presentation and hear the stories behind it, we're coming at it from a different place than those of you who have been immersed in it weekly for the last few weeks, so. Mrs. Kelly, sorry.
I was just going to say, it's unfortunate that the timing wasn't such that would be able to give you some time to be able to absorb. But I will tell you that the discussions of advancement budget versus any of the other cuts that you see here were back and forth. I think the administration, in some part, recommended that we do cut away some of the advancement budget. I think at least 3 members here believe that the advancement budget is so important to moving the system forward that we felt that we needed to look into these types of cuts to fill that, to basically remove the ability to cut anything in the advancement budget. So that's where we're at. Now, we might have a vote and people might have changed their mind, over time. Who knows? But, and I think the reason, I don't think you can go out to the PTO and just say, we're going to cut $750,000. You have to give them an idea and a corresponding impact on their children so that they can understand it, absorb it, and give us feedback. That's part of the process. And the warrant committee is looking for exactly this. Exactly what will the impact of this kind of a cut be to the Milton Public Schools.
And I would just point out that the warrant committee has been incredibly generous on a number of points. Every other department was required to have their budget in by December 1st and did. Every other department had this discussion. Now, granted, we're the largest department, so the impact for us is bigger, but they gave us an extended deadline, and for the last 2 years, the chair of the warrant committee has given us a figure above level dollar. which I've never seen in my 6 years on the warrant committee, any other of the 3 chairs I served under do. So I think that, in fairness to them, they've been waiting for this detail so that they can do their due diligence. They haven't had anything to look at in terms of understanding where they are in terms of thinking about what the funding level should be. So I think we've got an obligation to start the discussion with them, and we can always make changes and revisions and have the discussion about priorities, but I think we're overdue with regard to how generous they've been with starting the discussion for them and getting them some detail.
So we're not meeting with the warrant committee until the 27th? I thought there was another meeting before that.
There was the 15th, but that conflicted with the Tucker presentation,
Okay.
so we decided to meet.
So we're not presenting them with this list until the 27th?
We're going to send it to them, but so that they have time to digest it, think about questions, but we won't be back to them, at least at the full school committee level, until the 26th or 27th, whatever it is. They may ask to meet with the finance subcommittee in between.
I was just going to suggest, as a matter of process, that we meet with all the PTOs prior to the next school committee meeting. And then that meeting would be on the 22nd of January, which would be prior to going out to the warrant committee. So maybe as a matter of process, it would be to let that input come into the committee at those meetings at each of the schools, and then possibly voted on the 22nd as a way of getting it out there, taking feedback, and then coming to a vote at that point in time. Suggestion.
Mrs. Kelly?
And just, if this will be posted on the web tomorrow, any parent out there who's listening right now, please feel free to email the school committee and just give us your thoughts, because that's what this process is about.
I would agree. And honestly, in years past, we always have people come up with really thoughtful and creative, suggestions too, so. Well, Mr. Phelan suggested that we not vote it tonight, but we had talked about voting it, so what is the will of?
I would make a motion that we approve the, the presentation that's been given tonight as the way we communicate to both the warrant committee, the PTOs, and the public in terms of where we stand at this point in the evolution of the budget process.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Walker. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly, the grants?
Yes. I guess I would refer to whoever on the administration would like, well, let me preface it by saying, I think we all know that our teachers do outstanding work. In addition to what they do in the classroom and after school, they also write a tremendous amount of grant proposals. And we are lucky enough to have a number of them being presented to the school committee to accept on behalf of the Milton Public Schools tonight. And it just goes to show what a tremendous staff that we have, and we appreciate all the efforts that are put into it.
And to put this in context, Member Kelly had asked, and I think Mr. Pavlicek was going to look into amounts and how many times a year we should give an update of what grants, to Mrs. Kelly's point, teachers have written and been awarded. So we want to ask the school committee to vote tonight. The Blue Hills Bank Charitable Foundation, a new foundation that was formed, and I happen to know Principal Sheridan wrote a grant and was awarded a grant from the same foundation. The Glover School, the Weatherbug Weather Station, the middle school, a very exciting professional development. You heard it referred to tonight, high school teachers in math and science. We'll be going to the Krista McAuliffe Center this summer, $3,000. A science curriculum and lab at the Tucker, very exciting. I think it's kindergarten, first and fifth grade. Our new principal worked with Bernadette Moonen, our elementary science coordinator, and the Cunningham Elementary School Seasonal Nature Walks Project. I believe that's for buses. So I wasn't able to go, but Member Chairman Sheridan went with the principals and teachers, and the Blue Hills Bank Charitable Foundation had a reception and recognized all of the grant awardees.
Can I just say that that's the former, some people don't know Blue Hills Bank, that's the former Hyde Park Savings Bank, and it's coming to Milton, too.
But a new charitable foundation in that organization. Earth Networks, our principal wrote a STEM grant to supplement the Weatherbug station for the Glover. So I think on the news, Channel 4 or 5, the Glover was reporting in the temperature last week, I heard tell. And so that integrates into the elementary curriculum, and it's very, very exciting. You remember Lori Henry came in front of you last year. I sit on the Milton Library Foundation, and they've used the Milton Foundation for Education model, and they're beginning to give out grants. And Lori Henry last year, and again this year, working with the Milton Public School, Milton Public Library librarians, was awarded a grant, and we've put it in your packet. It's very, very exciting and touches every single student, explaining to them how to access the technology at the Milton Library. The Milton Foundation for Education, Mr. Phelan has done an outstanding job working in collaboration with the Milton Foundation for Education, working towards PARC and enhancing the curriculum, $150,000 worth of digital equipment. Today, when we met with the leadership team, it was very powerful presenting this presentation. We said, getting ready for PARC, 2 years from now, as we said to the leadership team, this would have been 3 more teachers if we had to purchase this with our existing budget. And Dr. Karen Spalding wrote an outstanding grant. I believe that only 6 in the state were funded. It's a professional development grant, and we'll be giving you more details about that $30,000 grant, which, with us cutting professional development over the past years, is a great infusion of funds. So I would ask the school committee to accept those grants.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any further discussion?
Just one thing, if I could just abstain from the Milton Library Foundation, because I'm on the board as well, so I just have to abstain from that piece of it, just. Okay.
We're just, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Just for that.
Just from one
just for that piece of
portion,
it.
okay. Mrs. Kelly?
So if I can make a recommendation, if we can just keep a running list, and somewhere on the web have a list of all the grants, because I think it's very, very impressive.
And on behalf of the school system, I write to all of these organizations. Ms. Sheridan has a pile of letters tonight to co-sign on behalf of the school committee and the school district when appropriate. And we thank all of these organizations and recognize their donations. And in my email blast, Maura Downs has detailed these grants, and we'll continue to communicate with the public about the detail behind each of these grants.
Great. Anything further, Mrs. Kelly?
Just, as I mentioned earlier, in the next meeting, hopefully we'll be voting on fees. We should be assembling budget binders that should be ready for the warrant committee by the end of the month. And then we have all the PTO meetings, so.
We're going to be spending a lot of time together.
Indeed.
We had a more aggressive date than that on the budget binders once we got through tonight. Mr. Pavlicek, we hope maybe next week to get those budget binders to the warrant committee.
Should we wait until he gets the cast off?
I was just going to say, with one hand?
No.
I know, you're doing a good job, Glenn.
Struggled a little bit with the USB, though.
I know. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have anyone here for citizen speak. Do we have any citizen speak topic responses? No, we haven't had anyone speak in a while. Next meeting agenda items, aside from the ones that Mrs. Kelly just reminded us of?
I don't know if this is a next meeting agenda item, but a couple of things about the library just jogged my memory on some things. Can we get an update on how we're doing on our objective of making sure every first grader has a Milton Public Library card. And also, can we get a little more drill down on this information you alluded to earlier, that for some of our students, the school library is they're depending on and not accessing that wonderful resource that we have as the Milton Public Library. I'd like to hear more about that. And while I have the floor, can I just acknowledge two people? You mentioned Maura, who's never on camera, but does just an extraordinary job of keeping the deliberations of this body, and I've had to rely on her several times successfully to figure out who said what when, so thank you, Maura. And Charlene Roach, who manages your schedule, our schedule, manages us, and never, ever has a bad day. She's just a joy to work with.
Always smiling.
And unparalleled, I'd say, because with all due respect to the rest of you, she never has a bad day. And it's just a joy to work with her, so.
Very nice of you to acknowledge that, Mr. Walker.
Totally agree. We have moved up the diversity report to the next meeting. My mid-cycle review, some edits, and I believe the Pierce Site Council presents, and we're going to try to streamline those presentations.
Great. Okay.
And if,
And I just,
Calendar.
for the chair, Mary had Citizens for Diverse Milton in this morning, and I stepped in for just a few minutes. With this diversity report discussion, we'd like to do it a little differently than Citizen Speak, so that we can actually engage them in some dialogue. They have some ideas, we have some ideas. Mary has already asked them about ways that they might help. So I just said to them that we would look for a way to structure that discussion so they could actually participate.
I think if they're on the agenda, they absolutely can participate.
Okay, then let's
Yeah,
just
it
make sure
wouldn't be
we
citizen speak.
do it that way.
Sure. Anything further? So I'll entertain a motion to, thank you for all those presentations tonight and all that information. Like, there's just hours of work that go into all of that to make tonight happen, so. I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session
Oh, right.
for the purpose, good try, Mr. Walker.
Yeah, right, yes.
For the purpose of negotiation strategy for non-union personnel, for collective bargaining with ASME, for the deployment of security personnel, and negotiation strategy for collective bargaining with MEA Units B, C, and D. Do I have a,
So moved.
and a second? Second. And we need to take a roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mrs. Padera?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you, and good night.